Game of Thrones Overlord Conquest. Chapter 1. The continent of Essos is one of the 4 known continents in the world. People often call it Eastern Continent or East. In the middle of the continent, the Dothraki Sea, the largest area, is not the other sea. It is actually covered by endless flat grasslands. It is inhabited by the Dothraki, bronze-skinned, tall, warlike nomads with their own language and unique horseback culture. The grass in the Dothraki Sea is tall and thick, and under the long summer sun, accompanied by the hot breeze, it rolls and surges like ocean waves. There are also sandy paths in the dense sea of grass, and a Dothraki tribe is passing by here at this time. The Dothraki are natural cavalry, and their riding skills are superior to any knights. They are a people on horseback. Only the disabled, the elderly, pregnant women and children in the tribe ride in carriages. Apart from these people, no one rides on horseback. The carriage will be laughed at. They also believe that wearing armor is a cowardly act and that armor will restrict their flexible bodies. Dothraki men would tie their hair into braids and only cut it off if they were defeated in battle. They also tie bells in their braids. Except for the first bell, which belongs to them, the rest of the bells are obtained from the heads of slain enemies. The Dothraki never touch the corpses killed by others, thinking that this will make them feel better. They are cursed. Braids and bells became symbols of a warrior's prowess. The Dothraki tribe walking on the sandy path also followed the tradition. Everyone wore braided hair, bare chests, painted leather vests, bronze sashes around their waists, and horsehair leggings. The team moved into action, accompanied by the sound of ding-dong and ding-dong bells. Riding at the front of the team was Khal and his blood riders. Khal was tall and strong, with the typical bronze skin of the Dothraki, black hair, hazel pupils, and long hair. He has a long beard, his braids hang down to his waist, and he seems to have the most bells on his head. At this moment, Khal is leading the tribe to the outskirts of Qohor. Every 3 or 4 years, the Qohor people will pay tribute to him with some gold in order to obtain his forgiveness and pardon the other party for a war. Khal is a title used to address the leader of a tribe, who is usually the strongest and bravest warrior in the tribe. The Blood Riders are not only Khal's guards, but also his brothers and partners. They can share everything about Khal. Some tribes even include Khal's wife, but not Khal's horses, Blood Riders, and their Khal. They call each other the blood of my blood. Obtaining gold is a beautiful thing, but Khal's mood at this time is not so good. When the sun sets, the tribe will stop and set up tents. At that time, a bandit from Khal will challenge him. Khal cannot refuse. Dothraki follow the strong, and only the strongest warrior is the real one. Caste is part of the Dothraki nomadic tribe. There will be multiple castes in a tribe, and each caste has its own command manager, called Khal. The control of the Dothraki tribe is not fixed, and Khal has the right to compete for tribal dominance and directly challenge Khal. After the death of Khal, if Khal's son Khal is not strong enough, the Khal can split their caste and become the Khal of the new tribe, or they can decide among themselves to create a new Khal. It turns out that Carolo will be killed to avoid becoming a strong enemy in the future. There are more than 40,000 people in Khal's tribe, distributed into 4 castes. He also knew that the young bandit named Meng, the other party's caste, was following the back of the tribe. On the way to Qohor, 20 suns had just set in the west, and the whole tribe began to spread the news about the other party. Legend. Meng is strong and brave, and can easily defeat enemies armed with araks using only linen cloth and branches. Some people say that he has been blessed by the stars and the horse god in the sky. His body is as hard as bronze, he is not afraid of flames, and he can control the sky. The galloping flaming horse, armed with a bow and arrow, hunts the white lion Harika. Time passed little by little, and the scorching wind made Khal a little impatient. He had 3 Khaleesi, but only 1 Carrero. His Carrero was not yet an adult, and the Dothraki would not follow the future. Adult Carrico. Once Khal dies, his fate in Carrickle is already doomed. Khaleesi is the title of Khal's wife. If Khal dies, according to tradition, Khaleesi will be taken to Ves Dothraki, which is the capital of the Dothraki and the only one on the Dothraki Sea. City. Khaleesi would join the Doshkarim, an order of Dothraki crones, as advisors to all the tribes, where she would enjoy the highest honor and status, serving as a prophet who predicts the future and interprets omens for the Dothraki. Therefore, Khal is not worried about his Khaleesi, only worried about his Carrero. The Dothraki knew everything about horses, but other than that, they were complete fools. They were traditional and followed the rules. Khal never thought of turning back and destroying the bandit named Mongo. The sun sets in the west, the grass waves subside, the red-hot clouds at sunset are like flaming horses, and the looming stars are the souls of Dothraki warriors after their death. At this time, the meadow was covered with tents, and suddenly the ground began to shake. Behind the grassy hill not far away, the sound of horse hooves came from far to near, and accompanied by the sound of ding-dong bells, Mengoko's caste was coming. Meng rode a red horse and rushed to the front. His exposed chest revealed his bronze skin. He had black eyes and hair, no beard, and his bronze face looked clean and young, with sharp edges, eyebrows like distant mountains, and resolute eyes. He is bright and energetic, his body is tall and strong, but he has a graceful figure and a heroic appearance. However, the length of his braid is not as long as that of Khal, and can barely hang down on his back, but there are quite a few bells tied to the braid. Outside the camp, Khal, who had been watching Meng did not despise him because of this. He knew that it was just that the other side was younger. The legend may not be true, but it also hides the truth. Meng eyes were also fixed on Khal, but there was a trace of unbearability and apology in his eyes. After coming to this world for more than a month, it was the other party who promoted him from Dothraki roaring warrior to Khal, commanding and controlling his caste. But when I think that this is the continent of Essos, and I am a nomadic Dothraki, although I don't know what year it is, the most powerful Khal, Horse King Drogo is invincible, and his invincible reputation has spread throughout the world. All tribes, he knew that there was not much time left for him. The Dothraki are brave and good at fighting, but they are also born cold. Those who cannot ride a horse have no value in survival. For babies born with deformities, the Dothraki will throw them to wild dogs. The traditional pride of this nation is strong and equally bloody and cruel. The Dothraki tribe does not engage in production except for nomadic herding, and its economy is largely supported by plundering surrounding countries. The Dothraki Sea is also known as the Ghost Land or the Great Wasteland, and is full of ruins of cities that have been trampled by the hooves of Dothraki horses. There is only one city on the steppe and it is the capital of the Dothraki. The vast Dothraki Sea can only accommodate about 25 tribes. In order to survive, tribes will attack each other, and there are always endless battles on the grasslands. The tribes under the leadership of Khal were too weak. They said they were going to Qohor to obtain the gold tribute from the Qohor people. In fact, they were the Dothraki sent by the Qohor people to beg. The real tribute should be delivered by the Qohor people in person, crawling on the ground and delivered to Kha's camp. Although Meng is very grateful for the important use of cow Jek, he cannot tolerate his cow. He is a leader who does not want to make progress. Such a tribe will be annexed by other cows sooner or later. When the time comes, the bell on his head will tie it into someone else's braid. Meng is also very clear that according to the original plot, the whole world will be in chaos. Even if he got survival weapons when he first crossed over, the current level of development cannot completely guarantee life safety. He needs more troops, needs to leave the Dothraki Sea, needs to further develop his own survival weapons, and Mongo also has his own ambitions. Chapter 2. The grassland is shaking. Khal's men mounted their horses and were on alert, staring closely at the grassy hills in the east. Meng took the lead in crossing the grassy hill on his flaming red horse. His hooves were tumbling and his long mane was flying. This was followed by the roar of the war horses. Dothraki cavalry surged out of the grassy hill, as unstoppable as a black wave. This caste looks no different from other Dothraki. They are unruly and wild. They make sharp roars one after another, as if they are driving away wild beasts and intimidating the enemy. They look at their opponents as if they are looking at prey. The eyes he occasionally looked at Mongoko were full of fanaticism. They galloped to a place 100 steps away from the camp, reined in their horses, and stopped their progress, displaying their superb riding skills to the fullest. In front of the camp, Khal calmly mounted the war horse brought by the Blood Riders. Before Meng caste even stepped into the meadow, he was already discovered by the tribe's patrolling scouts. The Dothraki are rough and savage, but their military capabilities are not lagging behind those of this world. When the tribe moves, there must be scouts patrolling the front, responsible for searching for traces of prey and enemies. At the same time, there will be roaring warriors guarding the two wings, and there will also be a Khal is responsible for being the queen of the tribe. At the same time, the Dothraki will not loot during the battle. After the battle, there will be Jokarang holding a giant axe to cut off the heads from the dead and dying people, and after them, a group of little girls will cut off the heads from the dead and dying people. Collect arrows from the corpse for later use. The boundless sky is filled with the fiery red glow of the setting sun, and the stars will turn into flaming horses to welcome the warriors who return to the sky. Meng leaned against the east and faced the afterglow, riding against Khal and his blood riders. The light of the sun and stars crossed the grassland, lengthening the long figures of several people. The blood rider guard wanted to ride his horse forward and kill the challenger first, but he was blocked by Khalzik. He pulled out the Iraq scimitar hanging on the horse's back, a sharp light burst out from his fierce pupils, and spoke with thunderous anger in his chest and a voice as strong as rock. Mengoko, I will let them burn your body and give you the honor you deserve. Kaa. Menga put away his little guilt and concentrated, a Kaa who has a heart of fear is no longer a real Kaa. Now I will dump your body in the red wasteland, and the rain will beat down on your rotting skin until nothing remains. As soon as the words fell, Khal clamped his legs tightly on the horse's belly, gathered strength, raised his Iraq, and charged forward with his horse. All the fear of Horse King Drogo turned into anger and unwillingness, and the blood in his chest began to boil again. Facing the setting sun, Menga squinted his eyes and carefully observed the posture of Khal. In fact, with his strength, he was completely able to defeat the opponent with a crushing posture, but he had a reason to do so. 60 steps later, the next moment, he suddenly urged the fiery red horse to rush forward like an arrow from the string, rushing flames. The two riders passed by each other, and Khaw's scimitar cut a sharp arc and struck Meng Ge's slightly leaning back body. The feeling from the scimitar was like cutting across a solid rock. This is a legend. Before Khal could figure it out, a huge force lifted him off the horse, and then the weapon reflected in his pupils looked like a branch. Poof, blood splattered everywhere. There was a bloody hole in Khaw's throat, and his whole body was like a rag doll, falling heavily on the grass. Blood continued to spurt out of his mouth, and one last thought flashed through Khaw's mind. The legend among the tribe is true. So many Zekelan's prophecies. His horse is as swift as the wind, and the countless tribes behind him cover the entire land. The Iraq in his hand is as sharp as Miscanthus. He will be as powerful as the storm, his enemies will tremble before him, and his wives will weep with sorrow and mourn. The bells in his bun sing of his coming, the milkmen who live in the stone tents fear his name, and the world will bow before his horse's hooves. It turns out that the person I should be afraid of and avoid is not Khal Drogo, but... Unfortunately, there is no chance for a do-over in life. After a while, the last afterglow shone on the meadow stained red with blood, elongating the figure of the last person. Accompanied by the cheers and roars of the Dothraki, 3 more corpses appeared under the hooves of Mongo's horse, which were Khaw's blood riders. According to ancient tradition, if a Khal is killed in battle, the blood riders should first avenge the Khal and then follow him. Now, no one will remember the death of Khal. The Dothraki only follow the strong, and the Dothraki tribe will only cheer for the birth of a more powerful Khal. Kaa Mongol! Kaa Mongol! Facing Cass, who was watching eagerly behind Menga, and the tribesmen who were cheering for him, the remaining 3 Cass had no choice but to surrender. Being able to decide Kaa with only 4 people dead is the most satisfactory result for Menga. As for Khaw's Karako, he doesn't care whether he lives or dies. Later, Menga asked the herbalist woman and eunuch to inspect the body, and asked the tribe to build a cremation pile. Cremation is a traditional custom among the Dothraki and is also the final resting place for warriors. It wasn't until the light of the moon and stars fell on the grassland that Menga had time to live in the tent and concentrate on opening the light curtain that only he could see. This light screen is just a display form, his real ability is the noble phantasm fantasy. The so-called noble phantasms are weapons based on human fantasy. Their strength and effectiveness are determined by the legends they have. Meng Ge's ability is to imagine a precious phantom and create a series of story settings for it. Then he needs to complete the corresponding story settings and let others believe it. It will be passed down by word of mouth and spread into myths and legends. The setting that is most recognized by humans will become the corresponding effectiveness and strength of the noble phantasm. Looking at it carefully, the name and effectiveness of the noble phantasm are displayed on the light screen. A knight will not die with his bare hands. Effect: any weapon that falls into the hand can be used proficiently. The hardness of the weapon is like steel. If the hardness of the weapon exceeds, the original hardness of the weapon will be retained. Mongo has repeatedly used water-soaked linen and hardwood branches to knock down or kill his opponents in battle. The previous strength was only when used skillfully, and was as hard as bronze. After killing Khaw and his blood riders with branches, the strength was enhanced again. In the future, as the tribe expands, there will be no need to perform deliberately. Reigns of the Riding Hero. Effect: human and horse become one, and can use magic and mythical species. This world has magical species like dragons, and there may also be mythical species like sea monsters and griffins. When Meng first crossed over, he could only use the instinct of the Dothraki and his strong body to clamp the horse's belly to prevent him from falling off the horse and being exposed. Until he greased a horse, wrapped himself in several layers of soaked linen in the dark night, mounted the horse, lit a flame, and galloped across the grassland. The Dothraki believe in the stars in the sky and the horse god, and believe that the stars are the herds of flaming horses galloping in the night sky. Now Mongo is the person blessed by the horse god and the sky stars, and can control the legendary flaming horse. 12 Trials. Effect 1, the body is strengthened. The body is as hard as rock and can ignore all damage except fatal damage, whether it is physical damage or magical means. Effect 2, physical resurrection, storage capacity, 0. Effect 3, resistance to known attacks. The 12 trials are the foundation of Meng, which brings a stronger body. His body was as hard as rock, allowing him to lean back slightly on the horse and avoid the blade of the Iraq scimitar. The remaining force could not leave any wounds on his body. As long as it is not a fatal injury, the incision will only leave a scar and not a drop of blood will be shed, but it cannot regenerate the severed limb. He has become resistant to known attacks. He can now dance in flames and bathe in boiling water for a short period of time. Most poisons have no effect on him. The story setting of this noble phantasm is that Meng claims that he has been tested by the gods. Just like Hercules in the original Greek mythology, he completed 12 trials. After completing each trial, the gods will give yourself more blessings until immortality and eternity. Hunting the white lion Herika without injury is the first trial. It is this trial that activates the effectiveness of the 12 trials of the noble phantasm, giving him the capital to crush Chico. After that, every time Mongo completes a trial, the upper limit of the resurrection storage will increase once. By then, he would need to be killed 12 times before he was completely dead. As the world's magic revives, the consumed amount of resurrection storage will be restored over time. And the next trial is to unify the Dothraki. Chapter 3. Dawn, the dawn of all things, dissipates the fog of the night, and the air is filled with the fragrance of green grass, but it is also mixed with the smell of horse manure. The Dothraki put away their tents and mounted their horses as usual. The tribe would continue to march towards the outskirts of Qohor until there was no new order from Kulmengo. A march of more than 40,000 people is not a trivial matter in other countries. It must have complete logistical supply capabilities and a strict command system. But for the Dothraki, this kind of action is natural and just a matter of life. That's all. Riding horses is life, killing and looting is also life, living day by day until death. As long as the sun rises and sets, Khal can still ride, everything will be fine. The next day, the tribe discovered that their Kulmengo liked to talk to an old man named Ofer. Could it be that Khal wanted to appoint the old man who could not ride a horse as his blood rider? Another day when the sun set, a team of patrolling scouts from the tribe did not return. Meng claimed that the missing scouts were sent further away to explore water sources. Until the 7th sun set, the tribe reached the Sarn River in the west of the Dothraki Sea and stopped here. Some of the missing scouts also returned to the tribe safely. Early the next morning, in the Dothraki camp, Menga rode a fiery red horse and, under the guidance of the old man Ofer, came to the ruins of the city on the banks of the Sen River. This is Weskvar. The breeze blew by, and Ofer stretched out his hand to touch the stone walls of the city's ruins, and a faint smile gradually appeared on his weather-beaten face. As we all know, the Dothraki don't do construction. Mongol stopped his warhorse and said with a smile. Veskvar, that's a Dothraki name. The world is full of incredible things, and it is rare for a Dothraki man to live to Orver's age. His protruding cheekbones pressed against a piece of weathered skin, and under his wrinkled forehead, there was a pair of turbid but warm eyes. There was a sense of peace and calm at this moment. Meng noticed that the old man's exposed arms were particularly slender. Long. After a moment of silence, Ofo's absent-minded eyes slowly glowed and he said. Tang Azenfine called this capital Shanath, and Veskvar was the name given by the Dothraki, which means City of Worms. Meng was stunned when he heard this. It was a foreign language. Before he could speak, the old man Ofo continued. All prosperity will usher in dusk, and all prosperous times will come to an end. Tang Azanfin is the self-proclaimed name of the language among the high human tribe. They also have a more resounding name, called Sailor People. After saying this, Ofer did not explain any more and continued walking towards the Sarn River behind the ruins. Meng Ji looked at the old man's rickety figure, thoughtfully. At first, he just wanted to find someone who was familiar with the Dothraki Sea. He didn't pay too much attention to the origin of the old man Ofer. He only knew that the other party's geography was very good. After today's contact, Meng Ji discovered that this old man was quite secretive. If you want to rule a nation, you must understand the history and culture of the nation. When he was a cow, Cass's doctor told him the historical legends passed down orally by the Dothraki. In the past, the Dothraki Sea was not as vast as it is now. More people called it the Essos Prairie. The Dothraki were not the only people living here at that time. The advanced people also used to roam the prairie. Later, they established the Sailor Kingdom around the banks of the Seine River. At its peak, there were 50 city-states guarding the capital city of Sarnas, creating a great civilization that lasted for more than 2,000 years. The Sailor People, the name also comes from this. Just like what the old man Ofer said, all prosperity must come to an end. The Sailor People dismissed the rising Dothraki and repented when it was too late. The kingdom of Sailor was under the control of the Dothraki tribe. It turned into ruins under the horses' hooves, leaving only a stronghold of seas with less than 20,000 inhabitants. Since then, the horses of the Dothraki have trampled across the Essos steppe, turning it into the Dothraki Sea. The Sailor People have slender and long limbs, brown skin, eyes and hair as dark as the night. The old man Ofer is definitely not a simple Dothraki, but has inextricable ties with the Sailor People. However, Meng was not too worried that the old man would be detrimental to him. After all, the Sailor People's country had been destroyed for hundreds of years, and before he became Khal, the old man had lived peacefully in this tribe for decades. Thinking of this, Meng put away his thoughts and rode his horse to follow. Passing through the ruins of the city, he came to a bridge across the Sarn River. Looking forward while riding on horseback, the other end of the bridge is connected to a broad avenue, extending straight to the horizon like a spear. At this time, the old man Ofer straightened his back, and only then could he see a trace of the Dothraki warrior in him. Hearing the sound of horse hooves coming from behind, Ofer turned around with a joyful expression, then stepped heavily on the ribbon-like smooth road with his feet, and said with a hearty smile. The Valyrian Avenue is made of lava and is large enough to accommodate 3 carriages travelling side by side. The Valyrian people's level of architectural sculpture is as famous as their Valyrian steel forging technology. Mongo, who has watched the original drama, naturally knows about Valyrian steel, which is a kind of steel infused with magic. It is not only lighter than other steel, but also harder and sharper. After the Valyrian catastrophe, the existing Valyrian steel weapons forged from steel are extremely rare, and almost every one has its own name and story. Meng Ji did not answer. This avenue really shocked him. He turned over and dismounted, observing the spacious ribbon pavement made of lava that was half a foot above the ground. In their heyday, the Valyrian people built the Valyrian roads that connected all the important cities in Essos, and although it has been 4 centuries since Valyria itself was destroyed, these roads have endured. The old man Ofo pointed to the western horizon and said, "This Valyrian road leads directly to the ruins of Ves Kadok, which was originally a city called Isolaya, a colonial city established by the Valyrian people." Meng Ji looked at it intently, then took out the dagger hanging on his belt, pointed the blade toward himself, handed the handle to Ofer, and said, "Using the Sarn River and its tributaries and the Valyrian Avenue as the benchmark, can you now draw a map near the 2 cities of Weiswalker and Weiskaduk?" "This." Ofo hesitated and pondered, then retracted his outstretched hand and said with a calm and serious look, "My Ka, please allow me to speak frankly." Meng Ji put the dagger back into his belt and nodded to indicate that the other party could speak directly. Old man Ofer said without hesitation, "If you want to determine the route and direction, my map is enough. If you want to determine the location and number of enemies, the scouts you send are enough. But if Ka wants to decide a war, you still need to check the terrain in person. The vastness of the Dothraki Sea is indescribable. It takes 3 years for the tribe to pass through here. Neither my map nor the scouts you sent can allow you to win." Of course, Meng Ji knew the importance of the terrain mentioned by Ofer, so he sent scouts to patrol and wanted to get the map in the old man's mind. Isn't this enough to decide the outcome? Looking at the rushing Seine River in front of him, he thought of committing suicide in Wujiang River, and thought of throwing a whip to cut off the flow. One of them was brave enough, and the other had many people. The high spirits of becoming a Khal, in charge of 40,000 tribes, and commanding 20,000 roaring warriors under his command, were fleeting. After calming down, he carefully recalled his previous plans, including cavalry, rapidity, raids, grasslands, rushes, and great victories. The familiar war scenes disappeared, and his mind went blank. He knew nothing. However, now he knew that what the old man Ofer said was right. He was arrogant. The terrain of the land is aided by soldiers. Predicting the enemy's victory and calculating dangers near and far are the way of a general. He who knows this and uses war will win, he who does not know this and uses war will lose. Chapter 4. The Sarn River surges and roars, like a wild horse running wild, flying through the sky. Later, Khal's anger might be as strong as the raging river, and the old man Ofo couldn't help but wonder whether he would die from the legendary branch or the dagger. Ofer didn't know if he was afraid of death, but he hoped it would be best to live. Khal's decision cannot be doubted, and his authority cannot be offended. He was so confused just now that he dared to refuse Khal's request and tried to speak out about the other party's fault. His cloudy eyes looked to the northwest with nostalgia, waiting for the final judgment. The next moment, Meng Kao's calm and majestic voice sounded again. Ofer, do you recognize the writing on this stone? This was the most beautiful sound the old man had ever heard in his life. He quickly stepped forward to check it out. Looking at Ofer who couldn't wait, Meng knew that his pretentious silence just now had an effect. Valyrian text, the stones are road signs. The top one points to the city of Isolaya, which is the ruins of V's Kadok, and the bottom one points to. Ofer's mouth moved and he could not continue. Meng, who was standing behind him, took a step forward and said. I didn't expect you to know Valyrian. Where does the road sign below lead to? Faced with Meng Ge's pressing questioning, Ofer was eager to calm down. He knew that this was not his illusion. There were too many clues revealed today. After getting along with him for 7 days, he knew that this legendary Khal was strong and brave, and also had the delicacy and wisdom that other Khals lacked. The old man Ofer took a deep breath and pretended to be calm and said. Khal, this Valyrian road also leads to seas in the northwest. The sailor people are lingering here, but the city has declined. Now there is only hunger, poverty, and disease. Really? The corner of Meng Ge's mouth raised slightly, then, wise man Ofo, the sailor people are huddled here and lingering. They have long lost their glory of the past. After destroying them, I am willing to give them the last honor. Ofer's breath suddenly stopped and he stopped talking. Meng Ge stared closely into the old man's eyes and continued expressionlessly. You have the same bloodline as Dothraki and Sailor. The bronze skin belongs to the Dothraki, and the slender and long limbs are the characteristics of the Sailor. However, you do not agree with the culture of Dothraki, but you admire Sailor. The civilization of the people, you call your tribal brothers the Dothraki, and you call yourself Tang Azan Fiend. In your heart, you recognize the resounding title of the Sailor people. When the old man Ofo heard this, he seemed to be stabbed deep in his heart. He could not restrain his impulse. The wrinkles on his forehead were tightly knitted and his beard was trembling. He said excitedly. The most elite warriors of Sailor will fight in sword-wheeled chariots. The chariot drivers will be the wives or daughters of the warriors. Women and men will go to the battlefield together. This is the tradition and glory of the Sailor people. When he mentioned the Sailor people, his eyes were full of reverence and admiration. Immediately, Ofer's eyes showed anger again, his voice was hoarse, and he growled. The Dothraki believe that the most important moments in a person's life must occur under the sky, so there is no privacy in the tribe. They mate like animals under the watchful eyes of the entire tribe, and even share their wives with the tribe. Without guilt or shame. Mongol looked at the old man Ofer's gradually distorted face. He knew that the Dothraki's concept of sin and shame was completely different from other nation-states, and there were some customs that he could not accept either. After venting his anger, Ofer trembled and lowered his head. After he calmed down, he realized that the person standing in front of him was a Dothraki Khal. Ofer keeps saying that he hates Dothraki culture, but he himself is a person who abides by Dothraki traditions. A complete Dothraki with a rebellious mind. Shadow of childhood, Meng Ge sighed, patted Ofer's shoulder, and whispered. I won't punish you. Your mother is from Sailor, right? She raised and taught you in the tribe. Ofer still lowered his head and said nothing. Meng Ge spoke again. I swear in the name of the horse god, I, Khal, will not punish you, will not slaughter seas. I swear on the mother mountain and the womb lake of the world, I will be the one who changes the Dothraki, will let Dothraki become the supreme Khal as great as the kingdom of Sailor and the Valyrian civilization. Ofer finally raised his head and then knelt on the ground. Khal, I swear by the gods of Tang Azenfine, by the horse god and all the gods of the world, by the mountain of Our Lady and the womb lake of the world, I, Ofo, will be yours. We share the same blood, this is the mercy given to me by fate. Meng Ge stretched out his hand to help Ofer up, looked at the other person's weather-beaten face, and asked. I know this may cause you pain, but I still want to know what other knowledge your Silurian mother has imparted to you, which determines how I should use your talents. Ofer stood there, lost in memories, and after a moment he said. My mother's bloodline can be traced back to the last High King of the Kingdom of Sailor, Mizora Alessiu, so in addition to the language and writing of the Sailor people, she also taught me the Valyrian language and writing, and Karth the lingua franca across the narrow sea makes me familiar with all the history of Essos. After hearing this, Menga didn't react for a moment, and his face looked a little dull. He originally thought that this old man was at most a wise man among the Dothraki, but now he just felt that he had picked up a treasure. This was because he was proficient in geography, history, and senior talents who speak 4 foreign languages are among the best in the world. Ofer has stayed in the Dothraki tribe all his life. Apart from the skill of riding a horse to kill people, Ofer has no chance to use other skills. He seriously lacks awareness of his own abilities. Even if he has this ability, he still stays in the Dothraki sea to beg. Seeing that Meng Ge seemed unmoved, Ofer hurriedly continued to add. The Valyrian languages I know include High Valyrian and Low Valyrian. At this time, Meng Ge's heart was like the overflowing Sarn River, turbulent and roiling, High and Low Valyrian, which is equivalent to the standard of Mandarin. He can communicate with all parts of the country without any problem. At the same time, he can speak 9 local dialects, and there are still the kind of your own dialect system. Ofer had completely fallen into fanaticism at this time. Seeing that Meng Kao had not yet recognized himself, he was eager to show off his abilities and blurted out. I have a way to help you deal with the 3 caste bandits in the tribe. The old man Ofer believed that Khal was so powerful that he still did not immediately launch an attack on Weiskavuk. He was cautious and obsessed with terrain strategies because he was worried that the 3 caste bandits would take advantage of the battle to break away from the tribe and stand on their own. In fact, what Meng Ge thinks about most is getting the enemy's tribe with the least casualties. He did have this concern about the 3 caste bandits. Although the bandits expressed their surrender, they had only been together for a short time and could not fully trust them. Any hesitation on the battlefield would have fatal consequences. In this regard, Meng Ge had already made a plan. For the sake of his ambition, he could only give honor to his opponent, and then patted Ofer's shoulder to indicate that he recognized his talent. Chapter 5. While Mongo was riding to the ruins of Vizquo, preparing to explore the Valyrian Avenue with the old man Ofer, a traditional Dothraki wedding was being held in the tribal camp on the banks of the San River. When the beautiful morning glow appears in the east, wisps of smoke rise above the camp. Dothraki women take a clean bath, comb their hair into a shiny black color, apply the unique spice and flower essence of the grassland, touch it lightly on their wrists, behind the ears, lips, and private parts, put on painted robes, and wear dark red clothes. Yellow or orange veils, waiting for the tribe men to enjoy. The sky is the dome, the grassland is the carpet, the wind in the wilderness brings the fragrance of green grass and wild flowers, and the bright and dazzling colors announce the existence of life. The long banquet table was undecorated, and old women shuttled among the tents, serving portions of authentic Dothraki delicacies. Raw horse heart, half-coagulated horse blood, roasted horse meat with garlic, dragon pepper, blood pie, and kumis. The sweet and strong red wine from across the narrow sea, summer red, adds a lot of color to this wedding, and is admired by the Dothraki. Plump and real, paying more attention to the taste of the raw materials themselves. The men bring riding whips, long bows and arak scimitars, which are traditional gifts they prepare for the bride. After the bride receives the 3 gifts, she will reject them according to traditional sayings, and the husband will accept them again, which is simple and true. Time passed little by little, and as the drums of music sounded, the women walked out of the tents with their veils on, and danced at the wedding banquet to the beats of the drums. Dothraki weddings begin at dawn, and the day's feasting does not end until sunset. As Kaa's lieutenants, the bandits of Cass will naturally not miss the wedding. They will enjoy women freely under the sky and under the gaze of the entire tribe. As for whether to give away their Iraq scimitars, it still depends on woman's body. The bandits gathered together and looked at the dancing women wantonly. The strongest cow took a sip of kumis, stood up, and walked unsteadily towards the woman wearing a red veil. Unexpectedly, he was overtaken by a short Darask man. Dothraki tradition is that if two men fall in love with the same woman, they must fight to the death. So throughout the whole day, in addition to the banquet, the endless battles would not end until sunset. A Dothraki wedding without more than 3 people dying would be a failure. When dusk was approaching, Meng, under the guidance of the old man Ofer, came to a grassland at the intersection of the lower reaches of the Seine River and its tributaries, and found the tribal scouts who were settling here. There were stops and starts along the way. Fortunately, no accidents occurred. Meng also saw the superb riding skills of the old Dothraki, but he did not doubt that Ofer did not ride horses in the tribe. After all, he was old and lacked physical strength. Khal, if you go further, you will find the ruins of Westeros. Meng didn't pay attention to this reminder, but looked at the looming forest in the distance with an embarrassed expression. The ruins of Westeros are not on the western grasslands of the Dothraki Sea. Why are there forests in the distance? The old man Ofer stood on the horse, looked into the distance, and said with a troubled expression. I'm so sorry, Khal, I passed through here for the last time 4 years ago. But at this time, Ofer seemed to have thought of the reason and exclaimed. To the west of the ruins of Westeros is the Qohor forest, and the trees of the forest have invaded our grassland. Then Ofer shook his head again in disbelief. No, no, if wild beasts bring the seeds here, naturally growing trees cannot grow so fast. Further west in the Qohor forest is the city-state of Qohor. It must be the people of Qohor. They are here for produce high-quality wood and wood carvings, and plant trees in our grasslands. The people of Qohor saw gold coins here, and the Dothraki may not care in their eyes, but in Mongo's eyes they saw the fuse of a war. Not only that, the Qohor people have now affected his plans. Meng felt ashamed and angry. The scouts could not completely replace his eyes. They only found out that the number of the opponent's soldiers was equal to our own, but they did not tell him the local topography. Now, the ruins of Westeros are surrounded by forests, making it impossible for the Dothraki cavalry to charge here. Meng was eyeing the Jamokayo tribe camping in the forest. When he first became a cow, he was very curious about the eunuchs in Kasri. Dothraki did not raise idle people. The eunuchs acted as doctors in the tribe. They used sharp knives, needles and threads and fire to treat wounds. In addition, there were herbal women. Healing with potions and charms. The Dothraki needed the eunuch's medical skills, but despised and laughed at them. After Meng learned that the eunuch was a doctor, he immediately put aside his curiosity and sincerely apologized to the eunuch. The eunuch who gained respect from him accidentally told him a piece of news. In the capital of the Dothraki people, Dothraki, the blood riders of Jamako once confided that they were preparing to set off from Dothraki, the city of Pentos. Mongo kept this news in mind. Later, when discussing geography with the old man Ofer, the other party told him that after leaving the capital, go straight west to find the Seine River, follow the river to the city of Qohal, and then from Qohal depart from the city and take the Valyrian Avenue to Pentos city. It is the closest, most convenient route, and most convenient route for supplies. The two messages corresponded to each other. Meng discovered that the routes were the same, and immediately sent out scouts to search and track them until his tribe reached the ruins of Westeros on the banks of the Seine River. The scouts sent news that Jamoka was found north of the Seine River. Austrian tribe. Last night, the old man Ofer told him that south of the ruins of Westeros are hills, which are also the origin of the western branch of the Sarn River. It is impossible for Jamoko to climb over the hills to reach the city of Qohal. According to the tribe's traveling speed, at dusk the next day, they will definitely stop at the ruins of Westeros. At that time, everyone believed that the ruins of Westeros were still a grassland, and Meng planned to lead the cavalry himself to launch an attack before dawn tomorrow. Now he suddenly broke into the unknown forest in front of him, completely interrupting his plan. A war that goes against the Dothraki way of fighting will undoubtedly increase casualties. The attack on the ruins of Westeros has become meaningless, and we have to make another plan. Taking advantage of nightfall, Meng handed over his scouts and continued to follow Jamokayo's tribe, and then called the old man Ofo to ride away. The stars were shining brightly, and the shrill howls of wolves floated in the distance. It was difficult to tell the direction in the night. Fortunately, there was still the Valyrian road underfoot to guide the way. The road home always felt longer than the road away from home. Meng rode his horse and whipped his whip to calm down. He didn't want to give up the prey that was brought to his mouth, so he stopped his horse and shouted to Ofer, who was already exhausted behind him. "Have a break." Turning over and dismounting, Menga asked. "If Kaeru Mokako leaves the ruins of Wiskadok, how will he go to Kohor?" Ofer said without thinking. "Continue to go west, and after passing through the Kohal forest, you will encounter the Kin River. Walk downstream along the Kin River, and you can reach the city of Kohal in one day." At this time, Menga looked focused, imagined a map in his mind, and asked. "After encountering the Kin River, will you cross it?" Ofer frowned slightly, the wrinkles on his forehead twisted into a line, and thought carefully. "Kohor city is built along the Kin River. As long as you know the direction, you can't go to the other side of Kohor city. Even if you go wrong, you won't be able to cross the river. The Kin River is wide and deep, and the river is turbulent and overflowing, so it is the Black Daughter known as the Mother River of Lorne is pampered and willful, yet tolerated by her mother." Meng drew a fork in the Chinen River in his mind and sighed helplessly. Could this be the end of it? Suddenly, Ofer's eyes lit up and he said. "Ka, Undercurrent River, we can launch a surprise attack in Undercurrent River." Chapter 6. The sudden wind blew away the hazy fog, and the moonlight shed a faint light. The fragrance of flowers and plants floated gently in the breath with the breeze. The eyes of the old man Ofer shone with an increasingly fiery light, and his wrinkled face bloomed with vicissitudes of life, and he said excitedly. "Yes, the Undercurrent River is right here. It originates from the Norvos Hills northwest of Kohal City, and flows into the Jean River. It is the only way to go from Kohal City to Pentos City via the Valyrian Avenue. This is also the last chance. Beyond the Undercurrent River are hills and mountains. The cavalry has no chance to attack here." Hearing this, Meng lowered his eyebrows and fell into deep thought. The changes in the landscape of Wiskadok made Ofer a little unconfident at this time, and reminded him in a coy tone. "4 years ago, when I passed here, the terrain was flat and open. From east to west, the cavalry could charge from a high position, but I don't know now." Before the old man could finish his words, Menga stretched out his hand and turned it into a fist, waved it hard and said decisively. "Let's do it. The Kohor people will never turn the whole world into a forest. Let's rush to the Undercurrent River in advance to survey the terrain. The Dothraki tribes all have their own distribution areas, but the Dothraki Sea is vast, and the tribes plunder various city-states in Essos. If this opportunity is lost, it will not be easy to find Jamokeo again." After getting on their horses and walking along the Valyrian road along the Sarn River, Meng returned to the tribal camp wearing stars and moons. Outside the camp, a short, stocky Dothraki man stood waiting. He has thick eyebrows and big eyes, half of his face is covered by thick beard, his eyes are shining with sharp light, his stature is indeed relatively short, but his whole body is full of flexibility and explosive power. When he heard the neighing of the war horses and saw the figure running from the darkness, there was a hint of fanaticism in his eyes. He reined in his horse and stopped immediately. Looking at the living man in front of him, Meng showed a bright smile. The man leaned down respectfully and said. "Ka, you now need to be reappointed as a cow who is loyal to you." Turning over and dismounting, Meng took a step forward and bent slightly to touch the man's shoulder. After all, he was now a full 8 feet tall. Without the noble phantom riding hero's reins, no war horse could carry him in a running attack. "Kosalo, my most brave and loyal subordinate, I will reward you and appoint you as the new bandit." Then Menga turned sideways, pointed at the old man beside him, and said, "He is Ofo, who is familiar with all the geography and history of Soth is my wise man." Korsoro did not show any emotion regarding Kaa's appointment. He believed that he had no leadership skills and wanted to serve as Kaa's blood rider. However, obeying all Kaa's orders was his loyalty. Korsalo has strong strength, but cannot express emotions. When he was born, he was abandoned because he was not strong enough. He was able to survive successfully and has more unknown past. When facing Ofer's enthusiasm, he showed his teeth in response. After all, Kaa once said that showing teeth is a standard smile. Seeing that they could live in peace, Meng looked pleased, and immediately walked to the camp at the lead, calling for the two of them to follow him. In the camp, in order to make the flames burn brighter, Meng directly put his hand into the brazier and started stirring. "Ofo, who had not had time to stop him, looked shocked when he saw this scene. Khal's hand seemed to be tumbling over his heart, and his thoughts were surging. At the same time, he suspected that this might be a kind of magic. Korsalo has long been accustomed to Khal's behavior, and the fanaticism in his eyes is undoubtedly revealed. He firmly believes that Khal is a person blessed by the horse god. Meng had already thought carefully about this battle. He wiped the dust off his hands slowly and said seriously, "Ofer, I appoint you as Khal's steward. When the sun appears in the eastern sky, you must count the supplies for 6,000 roaring warriors, 1 person and 2 horses, and 7 days of people eating horse chews. At dawn, these 6,000 the roaring warriors will leave the tribe and follow you and I to go north along the Sarn River, avoiding the patrol range of the Jomokeo tribe's cavalry, and then turn westward, passing through the Kohor forest, and taking a detour to the undercurrent river area. Kosalo, you. Now that you are the bandit of Cass, I want you to lead your Cass and the remaining roaring warriors guarding the tribe and continue to march towards the city of Kohor. However, you are not allowed to approach the city of Kohor without receiving my order." Korsaro had no objection to Kaa's order, but Ofer thought about it and said, "Kaa, please forgive me." "That's great, please tell me." Meng stretched out his hand to hold down Korsalo, who was about to draw his sword, and said with a smile on his face, "Ofer is my affairs officer, and the duty of the Blood Guard is to protect the card. For the safety of Ao, Khal is responsible for commanding and managing his cause, while the affairs officer is responsible for providing insights and assisting Khal in managing the tribe." Seeing Korsalo trying to speak but stopping several times, Meng shook his head and said calmly, "Compared with the negligible loss of authority caused by listening to other people's opinions, I am more eager to win and win at all costs. The Dothraki cannot survive without victory. Aegon who cannot lead warriors to victory is not a real person. Kaa, I admit that this will cause misunderstanding among the tribe, but if anyone doubts me because of this, I will cut off his head to eliminate this doubt." Immediately, Meng waved his hand to Ofer and said, "Time is pressing, please continue." Ofer saw that the short Dothraki had no intention of continuing to attack, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief and whispered, "Khalo, in your plan, based solely on the distance and speed of the march, it is enough to carry 7 days of supplies. However, if Khal stays on the outskirts of Kohor, only 7 days of supplies may not be enough." Meng looked puzzled and waited quietly, listening to Ofer continue. "The people of Kohor are not afraid of the Dothraki Khals. The city of Kohor has thick stone walls, and more than 400 years ago, they successfully resisted with 3,000 unsullied. He led an attack of at least 50,000 people from the tribe. After the battle, 12,000 Dothraki were killed, including Timio Ko and his Kalaros, as well as all the bandits. The remaining Dothraki were cut off. His braids were thrown at the feet of the 600 surviving unsullied warriors. These unsullied warriors who participated in the battle were called the 3,000 warriors of Kohor." Ofer was silent for a moment and continued. "After that, the garrison of Kohal city was composed entirely of unsullied people. Each person raised a spear with a Dothraki braid hanging on it. Now the number of the garrison will only be more than 3,000. Kohor the people also have their own fleet, and Jamakeo's tribe only has more than 40,000 people, so the Kohor people are not afraid of the threat of Jamakeo's attack. They will only pay some tribute when the Kohor people are impatient. Gold sends him away, this time will not be too long but not too short." Jamakeo did not dare to attack the city of Kohor. The people of Kohor would not choose to fight out of the city due to lack of cavalry. Finally, Ofer, based on past experience, believed that the game between Kohor and Jamakeo would not last more than 3 days, which would affect the trade of Kohor city. Meng decided to set out for the undercurrent river with 10 days of supplies. The war was already full of variables, and they could only make the best preparations they could. The bright moon was in the sky, and it was still quite a while before dawn. After Ofo and Korsalo left, Meng did not rest directly, but was thoughtful. Of course he knew the name of the Unsullied. They were light infantry who fought with spears, shields and short swords, similar to the ancient Greek spear phalanx infantry. The title Unsullied represents that they are castrated slave warriors, characterized by absolute obedience to their masters and fearlessness in the face of war. The characteristics come from their cruel selection and training methods. Slave owners select young male slaves based on their size, speed, and strength. The training starts from the age of 5, and they are strictly trained on how to fight from dawn to dusk every day. They are famous for taking courage regularly. The alcohol makes the body feel no pain, while training to erase all their personality, emotions, and self. During this period, as long as one of the training fails, the slaves will be killed. In the end, only 1/3 of the slaves can persist to the end and become the Unsullied. Previously, Mengo knew nothing about the armament information of the Qohor people. He was puzzled by the Dothraki tribe's behavior of regularly going to Qohor to collect tribute. This behavior can be called a long stream of water, but the ruins of the Dothraki Sea told him that the Dothraki could not have such wisdom. Now, he understands that the reason behind this behavior stems from the strength of the Qohor people themselves. The Khals can only obtain tribute in a harassing way. After all, the Unsullied are only light infantry and cannot catch up with the Dothraki cavalry. But 400 years ago, what was Temokeo thinking when he used light cavalry to attack the spear array of the Unsullied? Similarly, Meng also felt strange about the thinking mode of the Qohor people. As long as they trained and formed a light cavalry unit, they would be responsible for entangling the Dothraki during the war, and then use the Unsullied to encircle and annihilate them. If the Qohor people could concentrate your efforts and annihilate a Dothraki tribe, and no Khal will dare to harass them again. Maybe this is what is said in the play. The city-states on the continent of Essos will not rely on the steel in their hands to fight wars, but only gold coins. After all, it is a free trade city. For businessmen, problems that can be solved with money are not problems, but these people will have to pay the price sooner or later. In the stereotype, no one knows the military strength of the Qohor people, but the forging technology and woodworking skills of the Qohor people are known to everyone, and Mongo is very coveted by them. Chapter 7. In the sky, dawn is like a sharp sword, splitting the dark night and spitting out the blood-soaked morning light. Under the dome, 6,000 Dothraki roaring warriors, 1 man and 2 horses, gathered outside the ruins of V's Quo on the banks of the Sarn River, ready to go. Meng rode a fiery red horse, galloping from the east sun, with thunder and roar in his chest. I've never heard the Dothraki fear war since I was able to ride. 6,000 Dothraki roaring warriors witnessed him single-handedly kill Khal Draco and his blood riders. At this time, they saw Meng majestic figure, galloping on horseback, and listened to his roar that penetrated the stone and cracked the clouds. Suddenly the cheers were like thunder. Meng raised his Arak scimitar, his horse galloped, and continued to roar. Dothraki, that's the nature. The roaring warriors roared and raised the scimitars and spears in their hands, and the sky filled with anger. Menga rode past, weapons collided, and roared. Now we need to march, across the rivers and grasslands, across the forest plains, all for you, for your honor, for your wealth. Dothraki men, Dothraki warriors, Dothraki roaring warriors, follow me, yet, follow your Khal, and win at all costs. Honor to the brave Dothraki warriors, and riches to the Dothraki. The sound of roars and horse hoofs vibrated through the trees, shocking the earth and the earth. Under the leadership of Khal, 6,000 roaring warriors rushed out of the Sen River in a mighty manner. The army crossed the Sarn from the ruins of V's Quo and headed north along the Valyrian way. 1 person and 2 horses had to ride back and forth, and they had to be tied to the horse's back when sleeping. In addition to beans, dried meat, and dairy products, the Dothraki had a leather bag to hold milk, plus a corresponding amount of water, hung on the horse's back. When the horse is galloping, it will vibrate violently, which will turn the milk in the leather bag into paste, which can be used as food to satisfy hunger and replenish water. At noon the next day, the army moved into the Qohor forest. This forest is the largest forest in the continent of Essos. The trees in the forest are tall and thick, with trunks as wide as city gates. The leaves turn golden in the sun, and the cavalry are scattered. The horses jogged through the forest. Fortunately, the Dothraki had excellent riding skills. The forest is not safe, inhabited by giant elk and spotted tigers. Dozens of Dothraki patrol cavalry died under the antlers of the deer, or were dragged away with their horses and men, leaving behind their devoured corpses. The Dothraki cavalry were equally skilled in archery. They often hunted prey to replenish supplies, and also hunted lemurs with silver-white fur and big purple eyes. This feature is reminiscent of the typical Valyrian appearance, the old man Ofer explained. This kind of lemur is known as the Little Valyrian. It is said that stroking its fur can bring good luck to people. The trees in the Qohor forest were so lush that they could only climb to the tops to determine the time and direction. As the sun set on the 3rd day, the old man Ofer proposed to reduce the food rations for people and horses from today, and try to save more supplies to prevent unexpected events. It was easy to lose direction in the forest, and luck was very important. At the same time, he was also worried. The progress of the Jamokayo tribe may not be so smooth. Once the plan starts, it will slowly lose control, and it can only make corresponding changes quickly according to the specific situation. At the 8th dawn, Meng led 6,000 cavalry and finally saw the end of the Qohor forest. The Dothraki themselves were nomadic people, and at this time they looked more like wild men in the mountains. Despite the experience and guidance of the old man Ofer, it was still one day later than expected. Before they completely walked out of the forest, they saw the endless water. Meng's heart suddenly felt cold, as if he had sunk to the bottom of the sea. The northernmost part of the Qohal forest was the ocean. They once lost their way in the forest and walked to the seaside. He couldn't help but wonder in his mind that he had gone the wrong way again, but this looked more like a lake. At this moment, the Dothraki roaring warriors suddenly became commotion. "This is not poisonous water, it is water source. My horse can drink it." The Dothraki called seawater poisonous water and they distrusted any liquid that their horses could not drink. The old man Ofer got off his horse, took water from the lake and splashed it on his face, and said excitedly, "This should be the lake north of Qohor city. I have been here before. Its lake is connected to the undercurrent river. You can find the undercurrent river by walking southwest along the lake." Looking at the red sun rising in the east, looking at the lake in front of him and the looming Norvos mountains in the distance, Meng knew that he should be on the right track this time. Immediately, he dispersed hundreds of patrolling scouts to detect traces, and ordered the large troops to rest on the spot. At this moment, he fully realized the power of Wei Qiagong Li Jing, champion Ho Huo Qubing and others. He didn't know if they had lost their way when they fought. At noon, the patrolling scouts returned to the camp one after another. Based on the information from the scouts' investigation, Old Man Ofo determined that they were due north of Qohal city and northeast of the undercurrent river. At the same time, the scouts also brought back bad news. The Jamokayo tribe did not appear in the camp outside the city of Qohor. This can't help but make Meng think about it. Whether the opponent has left the city of Qohor or has not arrived, or Jamoko has already discovered his plan and turned back to attack his tribe. However, to be on the safe side, he only brought out 6,000 people this time. Roaring warrior, there is still a fight in Korsoro. Everything is possible, and all that is left to him now is endless daydreams and torturous waiting. He kept reminding himself to stay calm. He still needed to survey the terrain and couldn't delay important matters. Undercurrent river, flowing water rushes away, flying stars splash, and huge whirlpools roll up in the river from time to time. Meng was leading a team of cavalry to survey the terrain along the river bank. He looked at the raging river and the wider river as he went south, and said thoughtfully, "Currently, it seems that if Jamokayo's tribe wants to cross the river, they can only take the long bridge of the undercurrent river." After hearing his soliloquy, the old man Aofa said confidently, "The long bridge of the undercurrent river not only connects the Valyrian Avenue, but is also wide enough to allow the tribe of Jamako to pass quickly. There is no better choice than there." Meng also considered this in his mind. However, as the river downstream became wider and wider, shoals were more likely to appear. There was still no guarantee that Jamokayo would choose to cross the river on the long bridge of the undercurrent river. Until the group of people reached the confluence of the undercurrent river and the Kin River, they found no shallow water that could cross the river. Looking at the increasingly turbulent Kin River as it receded into the distance, he was completely sure that only the long bridge of the undercurrent river could cross the river. Meng led the cavalry back to the long bridge of the undercurrent river. The terrain here is just as the old man Ofer said, it is open and gentle. If the enemy is crossing the river and attacks halfway, the cavalry can attack the enemy from behind and charge from a high position. Looking across the long bridge, he suddenly had an impulse to go to the west bank to observe. The long bridge on the undercurrent river is the main thoroughfare for foreign trade in Qohor city, but it is not heavily guarded. However, if you cross the bridge, you will have to pay a tax. The Dothraki had no money, and no one dared to stop them despite the tax officials pushing and shoving, allowing the cavalry to rush across the long bridge, but the long bridge was indeed well built. The terrain on the west bank is not as open as that on the east bank, but other terrain characteristics are not much different. It is enough for 6,000 cavalry to launch a charge. The advantage is the Norvos hills in the distance, which is conducive to concealment. Each has its own advantages and it is difficult to choose. Meng still felt vaguely uncomfortable in his heart. He always felt that he had not grasped some key points, so he summoned Ofer and a Dothraki roaring warrior to his side and asked. If you were Jomoko, how would you choose to cross the river? What do you mean? Aofu asked thoughtfully, how will Jomoko arrange the formation for crossing the river? Meng Ji's heart suddenly became enlightened and he hurriedly said. Yes, will he arrange for the Dothraki roaring warriors to cross the river first, or will he give priority to the ordinary tribes to cross the river? Dothraki roaring warrior. The two replied in unison. Seeing Khal Meng's eyes looking at him, Dothraki roared, the warrior said proudly and bluntly. Dothraki warriors first. Immediately, Ofer also gave his own answer. This has always been the arrangement of Jekkau before, and it has never changed. Warriors are the most important tribe. Without the protection of warriors, ordinary tribes cannot survive. At this time, Meng Ji had already made a decision in his heart. Chapter 8. On the west bank of the Undercurrent River, in the Norvos Hills and the Black Forest, the rising sun was pale and dim, and the air was filled with hot and humid air, mixed with the smell of soil and grass, blowing in the face. To the southeast of the Black Forest is a small hill that stretches for miles, covering the area while blocking the cool breeze. The 6,000 Dothraki roaring warriors led by Mongol have been hiding here for 3 suns. The cavalrymen all looked pale, but the horses have not yet lost their weight. War horses are the life guarantee of the Dothraki in battle. They would rather starve themselves than let their war horses lose their weight. Of course, if they insist on it, they will have to slaughter the horses to fill their stomachs. At this time, a pair of black shadows suddenly appeared on the hill and rushed towards the hiding place at a high speed. With the sound of rapid horse hooves, they rushed straight over. Mongol looked from a distance and saw that the man rushing in front was the old man Ofer. After reining in his warhorse, Ofer, pale-faced, weakly climbed down from the warhorse, staggering and struggling. 2 Dothraki cavalrymen behind him hurriedly dismounted and helped him to Mongol. Ofer struggled and took a bronze dagger from his belt with difficulty. He raised it with his hand and said weakly. Khal, fortunately, I have fulfilled my mission. On the way back, we have discovered the tribe of Khaljimo, who is heading towards the long bridge of the Dark River. It is expected to arrive at noon. The moment Mongol saw the dagger, he laughed loudly, turned over and jumped on the fiery red warhorse, galloped to the front of the army, faced the hopeful and burning eyes of the roaring Dothraki warriors, and shouted loudly. Dothraki warriors, the war you have been looking forward to for a long time is coming. The horse god is protecting us, and the sky, the mother of heaven, and the womb lake of the world are also watching us. The gods are on our side. They have tied the defeat to the enemy's head. Although the number of the enemy is several times ours, they have confined their troops in a narrow and unfavorable terrain, leaving the most open and flat position in front of us, and this land is just enough for us to launch a charge. The enemy is immersed in the comfortable tents all day long, while we are fighting with forest beasts and countless hardships and obstacles. You are all the bravest warriors on the Dothraki Sea, and you also have me, the blessed by the gods, the invincible Mongol Khal. Mongol Khal. Mongol Khal. In the long-lasting shouts, looking at the increasingly blazing sun above the forest, Mongol took a long breath. He knew that the battle that would determine the future was about to begin. The sun was high, the paleness dissipated, there was no breeze in the air, and time seemed to freeze at this moment. The patrol scouts of the Jomoko tribe have passed. This is the 3rd batch. They are preparing to cross the river. The tone was filled with ease and excitement, and the old man Ofer felt relieved. Mongol listened silently, and waited for the other party to finish speaking before asking. So, when can Khosrow reach the Undercurrent River? Ofer grabbed his grey hair and thought for a moment, then said. It will probably take another hour. I know. Mungo nodded, feeling a little more relaxed. War requires favorable conditions, favorable weather, favorable terrain, and favorable people. If one of them is missing, a huge price will be paid to make up for it. After the Jomoko tribe arrived at Qohor, Mungo sent Ofer to lead a team of patrol scouts to return to Qohor Forest again to find Khosrow, who led the tribe to Qohor City. The dagger that the old man brought back was the token. After receiving the token, Khosrow will lead 10,000 Dothraki roaring warriors to move westward quickly, and work with Mungo to attack the Jomoko tribe crossing the river. So, the question now is whether Khosrow can get to the battlefield at the right time. However, Mungo was not in a hurry. Attacking from both sides was just to achieve greater results. Since he dared to bring out 6,000 cavalry, he must be sure of winning. After thinking about the problem clearly, Mungo turned his gaze to the old man Ofer beside him. "Officer, have you seen Jamokow and his bandits? Although it is not easy to cut off the head of a general in the midst of thousands of troops, it is an eternal truth to shoot the horse first and to capture the king first, which is also applicable to any nation. Otherwise, the strategic goal can only be achieved by killing the enemy in fear. The Dothraki are too conspicuous in the city-state of Qohor. Mongol and his patrol scouts cannot get close to the tribe of Jamokal, so he still does not know the appearance of the other party. However, although the Dothraki sea is vast, the Khals often go to the holy city, Vest Dalask. Vest Dalask is also known as Horse. The city of the kings is the only city of the Dothraki people. It is located at the foot of the Holy Mother Mountain on the other side of the Dothraki Sea, beside a lake called the Womb of the World. Vest Darask has no walls and is large enough to accommodate all Darask tribes at the same time. All Dothraki people in the Holy City are blood brothers. It is strictly forbidden to carry knives and all bloody fights are prohibited. Chapter 9. The red setting sun converges, and the river surface shines with sparkling blood, just like the momentary fragrance of life ignited and blooming. The land that has been nourished by blood will surely grow magnificent flowers in the coming year. The Jokarang holding a giant axe cut off the heads of the dead and dying people. The little girls quickly pulled out the arrows from the corpses and put them into the baskets in their hands with laughter. Competing for resources, reducing the population, and ensuring that the victor has more living space and supplies, war has been regarded as a biological instinct and is engraved into the genes of the Dothraki people. The blazing flames reflected the red sky. Meng rode a warhorse to inspect the injured roaring warriors. Everyone looked at him with eyes full of reverence and fanaticism. At this time, Ofer came over on horseback, bowed to him and saluted, and said, "Great Khal, you have lost a total of more than 300 warriors, but you have conquered more than 35,000 new tribes. According to the identification of the new tribes, Khal Jamak and his blood riders, as well as all the bandits, they all died in the battle. The old Dothraki has participated in many battles, but has never seen such exaggerated results. He now somewhat believes that the young Khal in front of him is a person blessed by the gods. As Khal said personally, he is the gods tied defeat in the braids of their enemies. He watched the entire battle, and at the same time he also participated in the plan to march back to the undercurrent river and raid the long bridge, but he still can't believe it. The rays of light drifted over the corner of Meng Ge's mouth, and he couldn't suppress the lightness and joy in his heart, and said loudly, "In the name of Khal, deal with the new tribe properly. After they surrender to me, they have the same blood. They cannot be insulted. If anyone goes against my will, I will cut off his head with my own hands. Wisdom Khal, I obey your wishes." Ofo smiled and expressed his obedience, but did not leave immediately. Instead, he continued, "I also want to recommend a warrior to you." Seeing that there was no one behind the old man, Menga said doubtfully, "Where are the people? Are they among the injured?" At this moment, Ofer's eyes began to shrink, and he did not dare to look directly at him, and said awkwardly, "It's just a runaway slave, but he has been captured, and now Korsala wants to execute him with his own hands." Meng Ge smiled indifferently, already having a guess in his mind, but he did not answer directly, but asked, "Secretary, I believe you have your own reasons for recommending this person, but I also trust Korsalo, so what is so special about this slave and why he must die?" Ofer relaxed after hearing this and explained softly. This man was originally a slave of the Jamokeo tribe. Before the battle ended, he took advantage of the riots on the east coast to snatch horses and fled the battlefield. He was discovered by our patrolling scouts on the way and was arrested after wounding 12 people. Seeing the angry look on Kaa's face, Ofo quickly explained. All 12 people were only slightly injured. The slave didn't do anything serious, otherwise he could have escaped. Now Meng Ge is interested in this slave, provided that this person wants to work for him. There are many celebrities who were born slaves in the history of the original world. He could give this slave a chance, but he would not directly pardon him irrationally. Thinking of this, Meng Ge glanced at the anxious old man, and in the other's expectant eyes, he said loudly, "You can go to Korsoro now. If this slave is still alive, convey my order and ask him to give this slave 50 riding whips according to the Dothraki punishment for escaped slaves, and then kill this slave. Cass, who has been incorporated into Korsoro, will let Korsoro kill him with the most cruel means if he attempts to escape again. This slave must kill 12 enemies on the battlefield in order to obtain true forgiveness." Ofer smiled again and rode away in a hurry. Meng Ji looked at the back of the old man running away and shouted. Tell that slave that when he is forgiven I will give him a chance to escape slavery. The hazy moonlight weaves a mist-like brilliance, and the stars this night are particularly numerous and dazzling. The light of the moon and stars shines on the high ground far away from the undercurrent river. After the battle, Meng Ji completely realized that even if water was inconvenient, the camp must be far away from the river and occupy high ground. Ka, we caught a caravan trying to get close to the camp. They were carrying a large box of gold. The leader of the caravan claimed to be an envoy from the city of Khal. Outside the camp, a group of Dothraki roaring warriors led a thin middle-aged man with a goatee on a rope. However, there was a hint of sharpness hidden in this man's calm and bright eyes. Are you from Khal? Meng frowned, a little doubtful of this man's identity. As far as I know, the city of Khal has closed the suburban shopping malls, closed the city gates, and prohibited people from going out. How could this happen? Send an envoy to pay tribute to me with gold. The man with the goatee looked calm, and took a measured, half-step towards the light. He raised his bound hands, reflecting in the firelight, to prove that he would not use evil means. He spoke in a hoarse voice. An elegant and gentle voice said, Dear Mengokul, I am the masked priest of the Black Goat God, Mori Hut. I was entrusted by the believers in Khor city to pay tribute to the winner. The man's words surprised Ofer, who was preparing to act as a translator. Morel Hut was actually able to speak standard Dothraki proficiently. No wonder the roaring warrior only brought the other person to the camp. The frustrated and violent Dothraki language also has a different gentleness and tranquility in his unique voice. Ofer put away his strange expression, turned slightly sideways, and softly explained to Menga. The Black Goat God is the god of the Khor people. He needs to accept blood sacrifices every day. On weekdays, the Khor people only sacrifice calves, steers and horses in front of the altar of the Black Goat God. On sacred festivals, masked priests will use knives to dedicate the lives of criminals to the gods. In times of crisis, the nobles in the city will also sacrifice their children to the Black Goat, hoping that it can protect the city. The objective explanation of the bystanders made Mori Hut, the masked priest of the Black Goat God, a little angry. However, Ofer glanced at Mori Hut and said deliberately, I heard that the faceless men believe that the Black Goat God is an incarnation of the thousand-faced God, in the house of black and white. Ah, shut up, infidel. At this moment, Mori Hut looked ferocious, almost crazy, and no longer had the grace and calmness he had before. The name of the faceless man also frightened Meng Ji. The reason why he was so eager for the physical resurrection of the 12 trials of the noble phantasm was because he felt that his life was not guaranteed. There were not many people who could threaten his life now, and the faceless man exactly one of them. The faceless men are a religious assassin group that believes in the thousand-faced god, the god of death. They gather in the house of black and white in the free trade city of Bravus. They are extremely good at disguise, have the ability to change their appearance at will, and also possess a powerful poison that can quickly suffocate people to death is called Strangler. Mongo can understand Ofer's intention, and the sudden appearance of Mori Hut is indeed questionable. The city of Khal took its time to pay tribute to Jamokeo. Now that the war has just ended and the situation is unknown, it is eager to pay tribute to him with gold. This is too abnormal. But by the same token, Menga felt that it was impossible for the Khor people to hire a faceless man so quickly, and they would not be willing to pay such an expensive fee to hire a faceless man to assassinate a Dothraki. The faceless men believe that taking the life of a person in the world is a sacrifice to the gods, and the price is usually very high. The price will also change according to the importance and defense level of the target. To assassinate ordinary businessmen, only half the price is enough to hire an entire faceless man. An army composed of ordinary mercenaries. Maybe Ofer just wanted to use the belief in the Black Goat God to test the identity of Mori Hut, but the inadvertent mention of the thousand-faced god aroused Menga's vigilance towards the faceless man. After all, with his great reputation, have to guard against it. Chapter 10. Under the vast sky, the crescent moon is like a hook, and the stars and rivers are rotating, waxing, and waning. Meng Ji looked at the ferocious face of Mori Hut with angry eyes and teeth illuminated by the bonfire, and the suspicion in his heart became stronger. He really couldn't connect this man with the faceless men. A high Valyrian saying related to the belief in the many-faced god is all mortals are mortal, and all mortals need to serve. The faceless men believe that death is a gift from the gods. They are just servants of the god of many faces, they never satisfy vanity and selfishness, they are low-key, calm, gentle and kind. But the faceless men are also good at acting. As part of their training, they need to abandon their true identities and regard themselves as nobody. In addition, they can change their appearance at will and can act like whoever they want, so this is also very difficult. Maybe it's the other party's disguise. Khosrow, cut off this man's head and send it to the people of Qohor and ask them if they recognize him. Meng smiled slightly and stopped guessing about things he couldn't guess. Why bother himself? Before the physical resurrection of the noble phantasm 12 trials is activated, all dangers will be nipped in the cradle. Whether he is a faceless assassin or a true messenger. What he wanted from the people of Qohor could not be obtained through war, nor through negotiation, so the messenger was of little use to him. If this man's head can anger the Qohor people in the city and make them send troops out of the city to fight in the field, that would be great. Khosrow never hesitated to respond to Kaa's orders, so he drew his arak and walked towards Mori Hut. Seemingly surprised by Mongo's order, the angry Mori Hut froze on the spot, and then shouted excitedly. I am the envoy of Qohor city. You cannot kill me. This will trigger a war. Seeing no one responded, he tried to retreat, but was pushed to the ground by the roaring warrior behind him. He could only lie on the ground in despair and begged. Kaa, Kulmongo, please, please. Prophecy, it's a prophecy. The Blood Witch in Qohor city predicted the future of the nobles in the city, and he saw you in the prophecy. The machete shimmered against the bonfire and flashed into Mori Hurt's eyes. The remaining trace of calmness in his eyes disappeared, and the hidden sharpness turned into a desperate plea. His voice was hoarse and he shouted in despair. Road. The fiery red horse is coming from the east, and the king of mankind is about to be born. Behind him stands darkness, flames, and destruction. The city of Qohor is filled with dead corpses without heads, and the black goat roars in the flames. Meng only considers strength and never cares about prophecies. He hates this man's superficial respect and pretentious sense of superiority, and hates this group of sacrifices that are generous to others. Therefore, he still feels that killing Mori Hut the head is more valuable. After irritating Mori Hut, the old man Ofer remained silent. When he heard this prophecy, he suddenly turned sideways and whispered. The city of Qohor is known as the City of Wizards. Divination, blood magic, and necromancy are popular. The people of Qohor firmly believe in these magics. You may choose to listen to it. This may be useful in the war. We are in a good position. However, when he mentioned blood magic, his face was full of disgust. The Dothraki distrusted, hated, and banned blood magic. They believed that blood magic was the product of the user's intercourse with the devil. After hearing the old man's suggestion, Meng waved his hand to stop Khosrow, who was about to take action, and said loudly. Mor Hut, you lack loyalty to your god. He will no longer grant you protection. Now explain this prophecy to me, and maybe I will grant you the gift of living. Mori Hut lay on the ground exhausted and helpless, breathing heavily and in a state of embarrassment, and explained honestly. It was the Blood Witch Bass Potter. He used blood magic to mate with the beast and the daughter of the noble, and gave birth to a deformed baby that was half human and half beast. Then Bass Potter sacrificed the baby and got a prophecy about the future of the noble. But the clues he saw in the prophecy are all related to you, and the future fate of the people of Qohor is in your hands. As the name suggests, blood magic is a kind of magic derived from blood. It is one of the darkest witchcrafts and one of the most powerful witchcrafts. The users of blood magic are also called blood witches or witches. Their prophecies are often made through blood, hence their disgusting reputation. Mori Hurt's description also aroused the disgust of everyone present, but if he wanted to survive, he could only continue. Do you have an impression of the tax collector at the long bridge of the undercurrent river? At that time, you rode a flaming red horse across the long bridge. Your figure and heroic appearance left an indelible memory for him. He was the Black Goat God. A devout believer, when the Blood Witch Bass Potter spoke the prophecy, the tax collector immediately thought of you. Meng thought of the group of submissive tax officials he met when surveying the terrain, but he didn't know which one they were. Seeing that young Kaa didn't respond, Mori Hut's voice became more flattering. Great Khal, you came from the east on a flaming red horse and easily defeated the invincible Khal. You are the king of mankind confirmed in the prophecy, and the flames refer to the pagans in Arhilar. They have always been. If you want to preach in Qohor and incite believers to burn the altar of the Black Goat God, we are worried that you will be seduced by this group of pagans. At this moment, Meng has completely understood this prophecy. The Black Goat believers are afraid that the Arhillar followers will cooperate with him to capture the city of Qohor and massacre the Black Goat faith that destroyed the people of Qohor. Arhillar, also known as the Lord of Light, the Red God, and the God of Fire, is the god of Essos. At night, his followers will light fires in the temple and pray to Arhillar to grant them dawn and to the light. The worship of King Arhillar has become a ubiquitous tradition in East Dalo Essos. However, after the extinction of the dragon, Arhillar's magic seems to have gradually disappeared, and now it is not as good as the prophecies of witches and blood magic. In this world, the widely circulated magical prophecies are quite accurate. Although we don't know the ability level of the blood wizard base Potter, at least what this person did sounds quite evil. However, the battle of faith has nothing to do with him now, he just wants to benefit from it. Meng Ge's eyes showed a cold light, but his tone was calm as usual, and he said with a smile. In that case, let's wait and see if the prophecy of the Blood Witch base Potter can really come true. After all, you seem to be unsure of the accuracy of the prophecy. Morihart was a little surprised. He really didn't expect that the young Kaa would say this. Great Mongol, the followers of the Black Goat have offered you gold. People of Qohor. Meng stood up and shouted angrily, do you think that I will be like other cows on the Dothraki Sea, and I only need to pay some gold as a tribute, and then I can be sent away easily? Man has only one piece of advice, kneel down and surrender, or prepare for war, and I will hang your heads on Dothraki spears just as your ancestors did to the Dothraki warriors 400 years ago. Morihut was stunned by the young Kaa's reaction. Before he could ask for mercy, Menga continued to shout. Kosalo, cut off this man's limbs, don't let him die, and then send them to the Qohor people to tell our tribal warriors that war is coming. Chapter 11. The night is dark. The tent was brightly illuminated by the bonfire, and the slightly damp wood made a crackling sound. Mongo, who was determined to declare war on the Qohor people, was sitting in his seat, listening to Ofer, the clerk in front of him, tell the war history of Qohor city. When he heard that 3,000 Unsullied were defending and repelling the Dothraki under the city wall, Menga, who was listening intently, asked. Were the Unsullied forced to do so, or did they take the initiative to go out of the city and form a formation to fight? Ofer lowered his head and pondered, and after sorting out his thoughts, he said cautiously. They should have been forced out of the city to fight. When the war began, the Qohor people first increased the number of garrison soldiers and hired 2 mercenary regiments, the Bright Banner Regiment and the 2nd Sun Regiment. They then purchased 3,000 Unsullied, but soon after, the garrison of Qohor city was defeated, and the mercenary group fled. The city of Qohor was in pieces. As night fell, the Dothraki retreated to their camp and prepared to break through the city gates the next day. However, at dawn the next day, the Unsullied were already there. Arranged in front of the city gate. In other words, the city of Qohor itself was unable to defend itself at that time. The Unsullied were forced to fight outside the city with their backs against the city wall. Before the old man Ofer could continue to speak, Meng Ge spoke out. He concluded, and then sighed. Although the Qohor people at that time relied on the Unsullied to achieve their final victory, they also suffered heavy losses from the Dothraki. Now I just hope that they will not be like you. Such a good memory to remember history. At this moment, Korsalo, who was completely bearded and whose expression was completely invisible in the darkness, walked quickly into the camp, leaned down and saluted, and said. Kaa, I have sent people to imprison the messenger Morihut. According to your order, after dawn tomorrow, his limbs will be cut off under the watch of the soldiers guarding the city. At the same time, I will also take the opportunity to spread the prophecy to them. When Korsalo finished his report, Menga did not reply immediately. He lowered his head in deep thought and no one else dared to disturb him. The camp fell into silence, with only the occasional crisp sound of burning wood heard. After a long time, Meng Ge finally raised his head, with a calm expression on his face, and said loudly. Kosalo, starting tomorrow, we will continue to send slaves who can speak low-level Valyrian to shout, continue to inform all the people of Qohor of the prophecy, and also tell them that if they do not open the city and surrender, the city will be destroyed. On that day, the Black Goat believers will definitely be slaughtered. Now we will immediately send out a large number of patrol troops to patrol upstream from the intersection of the Kin River and the Undercurrent River to guard against the landing of the Qohor fleet and a surprise attack on our flanks. Suddenly, Meng Ge stopped speaking and showed hesitation. His face was uncertain under the firelight. Everyone was waiting quietly and patiently for Kaa's decision. He sat up straight, closed his eyes and thought. After pondering for a moment, he made up his mind and shouted sharply. Search all the villages and towns around Khal city and bring back all supplies, livestock, and people. The Dothraki know in their hearts that kindness to their enemies in war is cruelty to their own people. Taking a deep breath and calming down, Meng stood up and walked into the camp. He lowered his head and thought about the siege strategy. Sometimes he looked up at the rough map carved on the wooden board. Then, he gently tapped a piece of it with his fingers. On the pattern of the dagger, he asked. Officer Orver, this is the Dagger Lake, a lake formed by the confluence of the Lorne River and the Jean River. It is also the only place where the Qohor fleet must pass when heading south or north. Khal, you are right. Ofer came closer to the wooden board to check and confirm, and then added, there was a fireship battle in Dagger Lake, and the Qohor fleet was the main force in this battle at that time. Now, the Rhoynar River is infested with river pirates, and Dagger Lake is particularly serious. There are numerous caves and secret fortresses hidden in many small islands in the lake. Bandits here ambush and rob passing ships. We may be able to cooperate with the river pirates to attack the Qohor fleet. Meng first nodded in agreement, then shook his head and said. We don't have a fleet, but the river pirates are cunning and treacherous. They will not obey the command of others, but they still need to cooperate with the river pirates, but we have to change the way of cooperation. After that, I want you to send people to Dagger Lake, spreading the news that the city of Qohor is being besieged by the Dothraki army, and that Qohor's gold-laden fleet will soon go south to purchase supplies. I hope that when this day comes, this group of river pirates can bring them to the other side. Some trouble. The old man Ofer's eyes lit up and he said, use money to attract this group of greedy river pirates to besiege the Qohor fleet and prevent them from going south to supply supplies and bring them back to Qohor city. Ignoring Ofer's response, Meng continued to pace and think. Attacking the city with the bottom and the heart at the forefront, preparing one's own defense, and cutting off the opponent's supplies are all necessary strategies for siege. However, he also lacks the resources and time to waste time with the enemy, so the siege must be more serious. Thinking of this, he asked. Secretary, our craftsmen should be able to make a siege ladder and a giant skin shield to protect against arrows. Although the Dothraki are not engaged in construction or production, and their manufacturing techniques are not exquisite or developed, they still have basic handicraft industries. Sure enough, Ofo said without hesitation, Khal, there is no problem with this. We can use local materials in the Qohor forest to make simple siege equipment. After hearing this, Meng nodded with relief and continued. I will leave you in charge of the siege equipment. At the same time, you must count out the male slaves in the camp and tell them that I will give them all a chance to escape from slavery. After arranging all the plans that could be thought of so far, everyone else took their orders and left. The breeze blew through the flames, swaying unsteadily, and Meng stayed alone in the tent, thinking a lot. The most powerful weapon of the nomads is the cavalry. They are extremely maneuverable in the field and can be said to be invincible. However, when they face cities and fortresses, they seem helpless. Even elite infantry with well-equipped equipment often pay several times the sacrifice when attacking a city, not to mention the Dothraki who lack siege equipment and are all light cavalry without armor. In fact, he had not prepared to attack the city of Qohor before meeting the Qohor messenger Mori Hut. If the enemy dared to send the Unsullied out of the city to fight in the field, he would give the opponent a painful lesson. If the enemy stayed behind closed doors, he would only plan to burn, kill, and plunder. After obtaining enough benefits through intimidation, he would decisively retreat to the Dothraki sea. Before unifying the Dothraki, there was no need for him to rush to get what he really wanted from the city of Qohor. But the arrival of Morel Hut and the prophecy he spoke created an opportunity for the Dothraki. No matter how strong the fortress was, it could not withstand an attack from within. Don't hesitate. If you don't take what God has given you, you will suffer the consequences. Chapter 12. Qohor, a free trade city-state on the continent of Essos, was once a colony of the Valyrian Empire. Due to its geographical location and occupying the east-west trade route of the continent, it gained huge wealth. After the end of Valyria, the empire after the collapse, Qohor became an independent city-state, which is now ruled by the city's high nobles. At dawn, the light tears apart the clothes of the night, and the noise stimulates the vitality of all things. The huge commotion caused by the Dothraki army gathering one after another naturally alerted the Qohor spies who were watching it closely. They quickly returned to the city of Qohor, which was more than 60 miles away from the Dothraki camp. The Dothraki are coming. This shocking news shocked the entire city of Qohor. Both ordinary people and high-ranking nobles were frightened. First, 2 Dothraki tribes fought in the undercurrent river outside the city. Then the envoys they sent entered Dothraki. There has been no news since the camp, and now the Dothraki are marching towards the city of Qor. In the city, the followers of Arhillar, the Lord of Light, conspired to burn the statue of the Black Goat. The chaos caused has not dissipated. Ordinary people gathered in the suburban villages and towns and closed the city gates urgently, causing panic. The prophecy of the Blood Witch Bass Potter came again. Rumors spread among the high-ranking nobles that the nobles wanted to abandon the city and flee. It could be said that it was riddled with holes. Moreover, the city of Qohor has not suffered the ravages of war for more than 400 years. The situation is urgent, but no one in the city knows how to deal with it. In desperation, the high nobles can only delegate the city defense to the commander of the garrison, Salo Qohor. Special, this person does not have much quick wit, the only thing he can do is to be cautious enough, so he quickly made a decision under the guidance of Salo Kot: stick to the city wall, stay behind closed doors, stabilize the hearts of the people in the city, and fight with Arhillars. The believers negotiated peace to stabilize the situation, and finally sent people to the city-state of Norvos for help. Norvos is an ally of Qohor. When the free trade city Volantis sought to rebuild the Valyrian Empire, they joined forces to defeat Volantis in the fireship battle at Dagger Lake and drove it to the upper reaches of the Rhoynar. The power was destroyed, and Norvos was the closest city-state to Qohor. For the cautious Salo Kot, he trusts the Unsullied who are well-trained and strict, rather than the locals of Qohor who are addicted to comfort and neglect training, and the loyal servants who can be bought with money. So the emergency measures he took did not include an urgent need to replenish the army. At midday, the scorching sun hung high overhead, burning the stone walls. There was no wind and the air was stagnant. Salo Kot was also from a high-ranking noble family, and could not be compared with the Unsullied who had undergone inhuman training. He could only stand on the city wall for half an hour before enjoying a baptism of cold well water. At this moment, ripples appeared on the water in the copper basin. After hesitation, an increasingly strong vibration followed. The panicked Salo Kot threw the towel back into the slave's arms and ran back to the city wall. He lay down on the wall and looked out of the city. Amidst the billowing smoke and the roar of thunder, the Dothraki cavalry were like violent winds and rain, rolling up turbulent waves and sweeping over the sky. Salo Kot was lying on the high city wall. At this moment, he actually felt the city of Qohor was a little low and small, as if it were a grain of sand isolated on the coast. He couldn't help but murmur to himself. Black Goat, this is the real Dothraki sea. 30,000 Dothraki roared warriors, war horses neighed, and the sound waves passed through the flowing clouds and went straight into the sky. Meng rode the fat and strong fiery red warhorse and galloped all the way up the high slope outside the city. His long black braid fluttered behind his back, making numerous ding-ding-ding-ding-ding bell sounds. He looked at the densely covered black spiked helmets leaking out of the city wall, and knew that the people of Qohor were already on guard. The warrior under the spiked helmet was the famous Unsullied one. A Dothraki cavalry led the messenger Morihut who was tied to the horse, and ran towards the gate of Qohor city. He stopped the horse outside the range of the bow and arrow, and threw the gagged Morihut off the horse. Then the Dothraki cavalry turned over and dismounted. Under the watchful eyes of the defenders, they brutally cut off the messenger's limbs, mounted their horses and showed off their power before riding away. Standing on the high slope, Meng shook his head helplessly and sighed. Sure enough, we can't expect too much from the intelligence of the Dothraki. They looked like maggots, unable to make any sound and constantly twisting on the ground. Morihut, why couldn't he remove the linen blocking his mouth? How could the enemy be frightened without screams and wails? Fortunately, Morihut was also a person of high status, and 2 Unsullied people slid down the city wall in a gondola, trying to bring him back to the city. Old man Ofer took the opportunity to gallop outside the city and shouted in Valyrian. This man's name is Morihut, the masked priest of the Black Goat God, and the envoy sent by the city of Qohor to pay tribute to Kulmongo's camp. He told us that the Blood Witch Bass Potter used blood magic to obtain according to a prophecy, Kulmongo will attack the city of Qohor with the help of the flames. At that time, the city will be filled with corpses with their heads thrown off, and the believers of the Black Goat will roar helplessly in the flames. Kulmongo will tell the people of Qohor to open the city and surrender, otherwise all the followers of the Black Goat will be slaughtered when the city is broken. Facts have proved that the cautious strategy of garrison commander Salo Kot was very correct. The main force defending the city on the city wall was the Unsullied, and the morale of the army was not shaken. But the garrison commander's mood did not relax. He cast his cold eyes on his slave. But when he saw the high-ranking officers of the Qohor people with noble backgrounds, their slaves, as well as the countless archers and the conscripted peasants who were responsible for transporting supplies, all of whom were also locals, he had no choice but to give up. The calculation in his mind was that unless all these people were killed, the news would definitely be hidden. Seeing that there was no commotion on the city wall, Meng knew that the strategy of attacking the heart was temporarily ineffective. Then he looked up at the Unsullied who had already taken Mori Hut to the gondola, estimated the distance, picked up the spear in his hand, and rode his war horse down the mound like an arrow from the string. 100 steps later, he raised his spear and threw it out with all his strength. The spear streaked across the sky like lightning and nailed an Unsullied one to the city wall. After a moment, the city wall responded in a panic. The arrows shot sparsely seemed to be painless, hitting his skin and falling to the ground. The war horse was in pain and was a little uneasy, but Meng did not dare to shoot any more. If the waves continue, who knows whether the next target aimed at him will be a giant crossbow arrow. Ka Mongol! Ka Mongol! The roaring Dothraki warriors all cast fiery glances at him and shouted his name feverishly. So far, although the strategy of attacking the heart has been completed, it has not directly achieved the expected effect, so the rumors in the city can only be allowed to spread for a while. Without siege equipment, the 30,000 Dothraki cavalry could only look at the city and sigh, show off their power, retreat and set up camp, preparing to siege the city. Chapter 13. The sun was setting in the west, and the dazzling light seemed to have been snatched away by someone. The remaining fiery red clouds and mist lingered in the sky, filled with unparalleled and magnificent colors. In the afterglow of the setting sun, a line of black smoke rose from the city of Qohor, continuously rising into the sky, and turned into mist after being blown by the breeze. Most religions encourage people to do good, but why are wars caused by religious conflicts often more extreme and violent? Meng was riding on horseback, looking at the black smoke rising in the city, listening to the occasional subtle commotion, and asking the knowledgeable and memorized clerk Aofo next to him. The old man looked stunned, thought for a long time and replied. Dear Ka, please forgive my ignorance. I don't know which gods and Essos are guiding believers to be good. I only know that mortals pray to the gods, never to let the gods tell them to be kind. Meng burst into laughter. Indeed, any god in this dark continent would be labeled as a cult in modern society. No matter what, the more serious the religious conflict in the city is, the better it is for us. Menga smiled and turned around, seeing the Dothraki army returning from afar, and then said again, Kosalo has captured many more prisoners. The population of villages and towns surrounding the city of Qohor. Ofo rode his horse closely behind Ka and suggested. Ka, there are already nearly 10,000 prisoners in the camp. Although we only need a small amount of food expenses every day, this is still an extra expense for us. Meng did not answer, but took a detour to visit the equipment building camp. When he saw the siege wooden curtains all over the ground, he nodded with satisfaction. The wooden mantle is a thick giant shield. It can not only defend against arrow attacks, but also allow soldiers to hide behind and shoot at the enemy. A wooden mantle that is strong enough can even resist the attack of large crossbows. Covering it with soil can also reduce the damage to the enemy. Flammability, and the most indispensable thing in the Qohor forest is the strong trees for making wooden curtains. Immediately, he looked at the Chinen River not far away, and said calmly, Tonight, fill in the soil to attack the city. The soil beside the Chinen River is moist and easy to dig. Order the old and weak prisoners to dig by the river. Then use livestock to transport the soil back to the camp, and send strong prisoners to carry the soil on their backs to fill it at the foot of the city wall. Remember to make them hold pieces of wood in their mouths. The Qohor city wall is more than 7 meters high. It is best to keep the prisoners under the before you die, pile the soil as high as possible overnight. Ofer had been in battle for a long time and was accustomed to this kind of behavior. He asked, Do you want the Dothraki warriors to provide bow and arrow cover? After raising his head and glancing at the sky, Menga replied without thinking. The view is not good. If a bonfire is lit at the top of the city, this suggestion can be considered. Before the old man could speak, Menga continued to ask. Where are the slaves who have been counted? I will speak to them. Slavery existed in many parts of Essos, and slaves were considered property and available for sale. The Dothraki would also enslave the people in the areas they invaded and turn them into slaves. They captured slaves from various places and kept them in Vis de Rask. They would even sell their fellow tribesmen as slaves. When different tribes met and fought on the grasslands, the defeated Dothraki would become slaves of the victor. Because of this, when Jumako's tribe was defeated, the remaining after the tribe learned that they would not be sold as slaves, they chose to surrender to Khal Meng without hesitation. This behavior of the Dothraki has also formed a symbiotic relationship with the trading city-states on the continent of Essos. You are responsible for arresting, we are responsible for buying and selling, you are responsible for plundering our citizens, and I will use them as slaves. Buy it back and it will be legal and closed. Menga's tribe counted a total of 3,000 adult male slaves. These were his siege infantry. Now he was going to bring hope and freedom to these people. In the slave camp, Spartacus, who made people's blood boil, had endless strength, was brave and good at fighting, did not exist. If life is grass, these slaves are just grass. Wealth, glory, and nutrients from rain and dew will no longer be relevant to them in life. Everyone, including themselves, regard themselves as grass and dust. Menga rode his warhorse through the slave camp. He did not speak. He just rode his warhorse and kept crashing into the slaves' tents, trampling on their shabby beds, trampling on their rotten food, and trampling on their dignity that was low to the dust. No slave dared to stand up and confront this Dothraki Khal. After all, everything they had, including their lives, belonged to the tribal Khal. But as Menga prepared to drive his horse and crash into the slaves who were lying on the ground praying, he could see a few slaves raising their heads with grievances, sorrow, anger, and unwillingness in their eyes. Finally, they were no longer completely looks insensitive. Even if he wanted to send these slaves to die, he still couldn't sympathize with them in his heart. Instead, he was a little angry. In this dark world, who can guarantee that he can survive until tomorrow smoothly and with dignity? Mongo shouted loudly, no one wants to be owned by others. He hasn't had time to learn Valyrian yet, so Ofer can only act as translator. As a result, Meng Ge's words, which were originally full of momentum, seemed a bit weak in Ofer's mouth. After receiving a vicious look from Khal, the old man could only summon up all his strength and roared. No one wants to be owned by someone else. Only then did the slaves realize that Khal did not come to the slave camp to vent his emotions because of the unsatisfactory battle on the front line, but that he had something to say to them. At this time, most of them wanted to listen carefully and send the other party to leave quickly. But unfortunately for you, everyone is owned by me. I have the right to buy and sell you, and I also have the right to execute you now. The slaves who woke up from numbness were willing to use their brains to think, which made them fearful and uneasy. They listened worriedly and carefully guessed Khaal's next order. Of course, I also have the right to set you free. All the slaves raised their heads, wondering if Khaal was going crazy, and hoping that Khaal would go crazy and truly set them free. If you want freedom, you need to pay the price. Most of the slaves lowered their heads again. They knew smartly that things were not that simple. Only a few slaves still raised their heads and listened carefully. The price: it's a pity that you are not female slaves and cannot be sold to Yunkai City or Lis City. There, they will teach the female slaves the art of love, learn 7 different bed sounds and 16 different body positions, and will train to be a concubine or bed slave. Perhaps it was Khaal's dirty talk that aroused the hormones of the slaves. They listened with excitement, and some of the slaves who once had families became more frightened and uneasy. You are only worthy of being sold to do hard work that the locals are unwilling to do. You can only be sent to the hot mines, like tens of thousands of other slaves, to work hard to dig gold and silver mines, but the wealth that passes through your hands every day has never belonged to you for a moment. After all, you are just slaves who do not even own your life. Some will be burned, and some will die, from fatigue, hunger, disease and plague, living an inhuman life, praying to the gods day and night, asking them to mercifully use death to relieve your pain and help you end this miserable life. Of course, there will occasionally be 1 or 2 lucky ones among you. The slave with better luck will become the slave master's fighter, so that he will soon die in the battle with the wild beast, and not even a bone will be left in this world. Menga rode his horse over the heads of the slaves and shouted calmly. Would anyone like to hear my price? The price of freedom. No one answered, and a dead silence fell in the slave camp. Until the first person stood up, then 2 people, and most people stood up and raised their hands. Seeing this scene in front of him, Meng Ge smiled and said happily. Have you seen the city of Qohor? Be prepared, wait for my order, rush to the city wall, and retrieve the heads of 3 enemies for me, and you will be free." The slaves were all calculating the gains and losses in their hearts. A tall slave with amber skin walked up to Meng Ge's horse and spoke a language that he could not understand. Ofer turned sideways and explained softly, "This is High Valyrian." Well, it is slightly mixed with a thick accent. Combined with his appearance, you can tell that he is a Geth. However, the current Gethe are all descendants of mixed blood with the conquerors. Living in Slavers' Bay, they naturally know the consequences of becoming slaves. Seeing Kaa's unkind expression, the old man quickly added, "He is asking if he can buy freedom for his wife and son in this way. He is willing to bring back 6 more enemy heads for you." After hearing Ofer's translation, Meng leaned over, stared into the Gethe's eyes seriously, and said, "Slave owners are willing to pay double the price for female slaves and triple the price for boys under 10 years old. But I only need you to bring back 3 additional enemy heads for me, 1 for the woman and 2 for the boy." Chapter 14. Buyers of the Unsullied usually merge them with their existing armies, integrate them using their own military organization and regulations, and let their own officers manage them, but usually the buyer's army management system is far from complete. Far inferior to the Unsullied. The same is true for the city of Qohor. Without a number of officers from the Unsullied who were subsequently sold, this garrison would not even be able to maintain the unity of the army. "Insect, insect, what color are you today? After the Dothraki barbarians outside the city get away, I will buy all the virgins for you in the best love field in Qohor, haha. Their first day will belong to the bugs, and the second day can belong to us again. Oh, black goat, the smell of the Dothraki is so bad that I can't continue drinking. I'm going to vomit, vomit." For 9 days, the Dothraki had besieged the city but had never taken any siege action, causing the officers who were born from the Qohor nobles to return to their old ways. Perhaps it was the psychological pressure the war brought to them that made some bad habits worse. As long as the commander of the garrison, Solo Coat, goes to a meeting or banquet organized by the high-ranking nobles, they will drink and have fun all night long, and they will make fun of them unscrupulously when they are drunk. A man with 3 spikes on his spiked helmet. Unsullied officer. There are no decorations on the Unsullied's attire, just a sewn tunic, short sword, 3 spears, shield and spiked helmet. The more spikes on the spiked helmet, the higher the level of the wearer. 3 spikes represent a senior military officer. Seeing that the Unsullied officers were still loyal to their duties and had no reaction to their teasing, the noble officers of Qohor became increasingly angry. The garrison commander Solo Coat trusted the bugs very much. After taking office, he immediately relieved the noble officers of their management and command authority and handed it over to the unsmiling 3-thorned bug in front of him. The drunken noble officer of Qohor stood up unsteadily, with a hideous face, and said inarticulately, "Chong, Chong, I know that it is my father who bought you. Come down and answer your ancestors' questions. I ask you what color you are today, grey, yellow, or white." From the moment the Unsullied were purchased as slaves, they lost their names. They decide their names for the day by randomly drawing name tags from a bucket. There are 2 words on each name tag, 1 for color and 1 for bug. The noble wanted to step forward and pull the bug away, but too much alcohol numbed his nerves. Perhaps it was also because of the expressionless evil look on the worm's face that he could only act stupidly like a hen and continue to shout sarcastically. "When you were castrated, were you completely cut off? When they burned your private work to ashes, did you feel regretful? I heard that the day a boy was castrated, he would be given a puppy to raise. At the end of the first year of training the boy has to strangle the puppy, if he can't do it the boy is killed. Bug, you get the spiked helmet of the Unsullied but don't become dog fodder, you are really cruel." The worm ignored the incompetent screamer, but the officers' companions knew that the defense of the city still needed to rely on the Unsullied, so they stepped forward to hold the noble officer who had fallen into madness. But this was not enough to calm him down. His father was the most powerful nobleman in the city of Qohor, but the lowly bug took away his position and his achievements, so he continued to get close to Chongza, had a dark face and gritted his teeth and said, "That day, how did you feel when you came to the slave market wearing a silver mask, bought a newborn, and killed him with your own hands in front of his mother? It must have been very satisfying when you compensated the slave owner for the loss, haha." As he talked, Officer Khal was enjoying himself and laughing wildly. The Unsullied officer glanced outside the dark city, and then walked down the city wall in a standard military manner. He still ignored the noble officer. Since he started training at the age of 5, He has long lost his emotions and self. However, if he was allowed to use his knowledge as an officer to provide advice, he would still lack a lot of experience in defending the city this time. For example, torches should be thrown outside the city for lighting at regular intervals to prevent enemies from attacking and stealing the city at night, but he is just a white worm without individual emotions and will only obey the orders of the master with command authority. The courtyard of the high nobles in the city. The entire house is guarded by the Unsullied, and a 12-foot-high brick wall stands outside the house. An ivy garden and flowering trees surround a marble pool, in which stands a handsome and elegant statue of a boy carved from painted marble. The occasional barking of a dog reveals that there is a kennel hidden in the backyard. Residential dinner hall. Long white candles illuminated the hall as if it were daytime. A set of gorgeous tapestry depicting tribute to the 3,000 warriors of Qohor hung on the wall. It was woven from wool, silk, and gold and silver threads, and was enough to be regarded by the nobles. Make it a family heirloom. Young girls and ladies, their silk skirts rubbing, accompanied by laughter, the strong smell of perfume filled the air. Let us pay tribute to Commander Salokot. It was his wisdom and bravery that prevented the Dothraki barbarians from taking a step closer to the city wall. The owner of the courtyard is short, old, fat and bald. His body is covered with perfume and he wears yellow silk with golden tassels. He raises the wine glass in his hand and loudly enhances the atmosphere. Salokot was not happy. It was like the calm before the storm. The Dothraki did not attack directly like a mad cow, which was the most terrifying situation. But he also belonged to a high-level noble family, so he had to be far-fetched. Defending the city still had to rely on the gang of moths in front of him. After all, the Unsullied were purchased with money from the nobles. Let us raise our glasses to celebrate once again. The followers of the Black Goat have shattered the plot of the heretics of Arhillar. Salokot looked pale and weak, which was the reason why he came to the banquet willingly. I want to warn the high-ranking nobles that the believers of Arhillar, the Lord of Light, are still hiding in the city, silently accumulating strength. The commotion of the heretics at dusk is probably just a diversion. They must have other plans. Dear ladies, please put down your wine glasses and let us pray to the Black Goat together to bless the smooth return of the Qohor fleet, the successful landing of the fleet, and a heavy blow to the Dothraki. The Black Goat god is still guarding the city of Qohor. Now, all Salokot wanted to do was smash the wine glass in his hand onto the fat and stupid face of his bald master. He actually openly publicized the military secrets of the fleet's landing at a banquet in front of the public. What's more, Qohor City had lost contact with the fleet 3 days ago. But this group of moths simply believed that the fleet was struggling to move north and had no time to care. After all, the city of Qohor is being besieged by the Dothraki, and it is not normal for news to fail to reach them. But the Dothraki had no ability to besiege the water gate near the Cheen River. The high nobles retorted that the Dothraki had no fleet and were no threat. Salokot felt a strong sense of powerlessness in his heart. He couldn't help but raised the wine bottle in his hand in frustration and started drinking heavily. Qohor, who has not experienced war in 400 years. What should I do to save you? Chapter 15. The night seems to be a beautifully woven tapestry produced by the Qohor people, but unfortunately there are no shining star gems dotting it tonight. The rushing river meanders among the dense shadows of trees, with only the leaves rustling in the wind attracting attention. Under the cover of night, several torches appeared intermittently beside the Kin River. Under the supervision of the Dothraki holding sharp blades, the prisoners worked hard to dig out the soil in silence, looking along the direction of the caged livestock, and the darkness was endless. The transport convoy spread to the foot of Qohor City. In front of the city of Qohor, it was even more quiet and dark, and even those who were not far away could not see each other clearly. Groups of slightly stronger prisoners held branches in their mouths and were connected with hemp ropes at their waists. Those with excellent eyesight took the lead. They carried the soil on their backs and silently headed towards the foot of the city wall. Warn the prisoners, don't be anxious, slow down, and be sure not to alert the guards on the city wall. Mongo personally brought the affairs officers Ofer and Casca Corsalo to supervise here to prevent accidents and to respond to the situation at any time. In the dead of night, the sound of the horses' hooves was too disturbing, so the three of them dismounted and walked. After hearing Kaa's instructions, Corsaro turned around and left to carry out the order, while Ofo looked up and could barely see the faint light of the city head and whispered. Kaa, the city of Qohal is unique compared to other uninsurable cities. It is blocked by the Chin River in front, so you can only pass through the bridge on the river. There is also the Qohal forest on the side, which blocks the way. Countless. Meng stretched out his riding crop, pointed at the bridge in front of him, and said calmly. When we rushed to the undercurrent river, we took a detour directly around the city of Qohor. At the beginning, I was still wondering how the 3,000 Unsullied were able to form an array with their backs against the city wall to resist the Dothraki cavalry. Seeing the terrain here, I was confused. Understandable, but it was this unique blessing that allowed them to indulge in comfort. Even basic defences such as trenches and juma were not built in front of the city wall. Looking at the wide and gorgeous repaired bridge in front of him, Ofer seemed to think of something. He couldn't help covering his mouth and chuckled. He tried to smooth the wrinkles on his face, calmed down and said. The city of Qohor is in charge of the east-west trade route. The people of Qohor are only thinking about trade and gold coins. They just wish they could fill up the Cheen River and use it to pass through for business. Who would care about the Valyrian people who built the city in the first place? Other functions given to the river, not to mention the fortifications you mentioned. Time passed little by little, and Meng, who had extraordinary eyesight, could see the shadowy unsullied night watch soldiers on the city wall. If the weather was better tonight, maybe they would be able to spot the gradually rising mountains under the city wall. At night, through the bonfires lit on the city wall, he also saw several drunken sergeants urinating and insulting the city. The sky in the east was about to turn white. Looking at the two city walls that were half buried in the soil, Meng knew that the attack on Qohor was secure. Time passed again. I don't know whether it was because the earth was piled higher and higher, and the unusual noises made attracted attention, or because it was getting darker, the defenders discovered the earth-moving team outside the city. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Accompanied by shrill shouts, heads on the city wall began to commotion. Since the Dothraki sea eastward, Ofer has never taken a serious rest, which is a bit too heavy and tiring for a man of his age. He looked tired and pale, but he still took the initiative to ask. Khal, do you want to stop the filling plan? Meng ignored the old man and looked at the panicked captives of the earth transport team. His face was expressionless and he shouted without hesitation. Continue filling in the soil and supervise the troops to come forward. Anyone who dares to retreat will be killed. Then he ran quickly to the warhorse in the distance, got on his horse, and continued to shout. The wooden curtain team comes forward, 150 steps forward. The wooden mantle team is composed of teams of dismounted Dothraki cavalry carrying wooden mantles. They will advance to the city with giant shields like wooden mantles and shoot at the archers hiding behind the battlements. Their purpose it was to cover the prisoners and continue to fill the city. As sparse arrows were shot from the city wall, the unarmored prisoners fell to the ground with blood staining the ground red. The timid prisoners panicked, dropped the dirt on their backs, and tried to escape. The hemp rope tied around the waist became the culprit of the chaos in the team. The branch in his mouth was spitted on the ground along with his saliva. Exclaims and screams followed. Seeing this human tragedy, Meng spurred his horse and shouted. Supervise the battle team to step forward and cut off the ropes of the prisoners. Those who retreat and those who run around will be killed. As the heads fall to the ground one by one, the filling operation can proceed smoothly. Seeing the dirt being transported back from the distant river and piled into several mounds, Meng shouted to the Dothraki cavalry guarding behind him. Quickly pass on my order to bring back the digging team by the river and let them supplement the filling team. The prisoners responsible for digging and transporting soil by the Kin River were all old and weak, women and children, but they were not dangerous and did not need to avoid enemy inspections. They also had the help of livestock and were very efficient. Now, the sooner the soil can be filled to 5 meters of the city wall, the fewer people will die. No rush, no rush. Meng held the riding crop with both hands, trying his best to suppress his excitement and urgency. It is very likely that there is no such weapon as a ballista in the city of Qohor. It was discovered by the affairs officer Ofer. For the past 9 days, the Dothraki have not been idle. Ofer has surveyed the ground outside the city and found no weeds, trees, or strange rocks, which can be used as markers for ballista measurements. Filling the city with prisoners not only paves the way for the army to launch an attack, but also consumes the arrows and physical strength of the enemy's archers and tests the strength of the enemy's ballistas and other sharp weapons. As expected, only arrows were seen shooting from the city wall, but no more lethal weapons such as giant crossbow arrows and stone bullets were seen. As the wooden mantle team approached 150 steps, they started to shoot at the archers on the city wall. No enemy was seen using ballistas to attack the wooden mantle, which could defend against ordinary arrows. Meng couldn't help but wonder in his heart, whether the enemy was still hiding, or whether the garrison force of Khal city did not engage in city defense on weekdays, but was only responsible for patrolling the streets and maintaining public order in the city. As time passed, he was greatly disappointed with the defense of the city. The entire garrison seemed to have just woken up, without any organization. The enemy did not even use rockets to attack the wooden curtain. The mud was just white. Isn't the enemy commander on the city wall? A bold idea entered Meng Ge's mind and lingered. In fact, the garrison commander Salocote was not on the city wall. He was always cautious, but he drank too much at the banquet to drown his sorrows. When the city's alarm sounded, he got up from the woman's bed. Moreover, Meng Ge has a biased understanding of the Unsullied. They are impeccable in both their individual combat effectiveness and their discipline and organization. But they are still just war weapons, no different from the scimitars, spears, bows and arrows in their hands. The weapons have no thoughts and will only follow the direction of the master's hand. The free trade city-state likes to buy the Unsullied. In addition to their absolute obedience to their masters and their fearlessness in the face of war, they also let them act as guards to protect themselves, or patrol to maintain law and order. After all, the Unsullied will never rob or molest. Although the Unsullied are strong, they do not have much independent ability. All their actions in war completely depend on their masters. Chapter 16. Get up at dawn and plough the courtyard to sweep the holes. A mound of nearly 6 meters high was piled outside the city wall. When the order to retreat was given, the prisoners who filled the city rolled and crawled out of the battlefield. What separates the Chinen River is life and death. Red and white are filled with nightmare-like illusions. All mortals are destined to die, and life will be disillusioned. Meng galloped on his war horse with his whip raised, facing the 3,000 slave warriors arrayed in front, and shouted loudly. Slaves, what I want to say to you now is not to ask you to be brave and good at fighting, live and run towards freedom, bring back 3 enemy heads for me, and cancel all the debts you owe me, warriors, world the gods will be with you. The trumpeter blew the horn, and the slave warriors who stood silently roared, took steps, and rushed towards the city of Khal. The entire front was like a surging wave, moving forward without fear of the rocky beach in front. The archers on the city wall were ready to attack, and arrows fell like a shower, plunging into the dense team of slave warriors. Without the protection of armor, countless screams broke out from the slave warriors. The slave at the front fell like wheat blown down by the strong wind, and was in a mess. What's more important is that the slave warriors were frightened by the arrows. Their fierce energy was exhausted, their courage was lost, and they were suddenly at a loss. The brave move forward, the hesitant stop, and the timid retreat. At this moment, behind the slave warrior team, a group of Dothraki cavalry raised their Arak scimitars and roared towards the defeated army. This was the first time the Dothraki cavalry had launched a charge since the beginning of the war. Amidst the flash of swords and rain of blood, they were warned not to stop. The horn sounded, and the slave warriors were forced to attack Khal city again with blood-red pupils and fighting spirit. There were roars, screams, and blood splattering. Looking forward, there was blood and corpses everywhere. The pale-faced affairs officer Ofo said feebly. Khal, things don't seem to be ideal. Meng Ge frowned subconsciously, his eyes were cold, and he tried hard to suppress the displeasure in his heart and said. When filling the city, the enemy did not have such rules and organization. If the Khal garrison did not have compassion and sympathy for the compatriots' prisoners, or was hiding their strength, it could only mean that the enemy's commander had just arrived. Slaves have bad luck. Khal. Before Ofer could continue to speak, he was interrupted by Menga. He waved the Dothraki cavalry over to take away the weak old man, and said at the same time. Officer, what you need most now is to rest. Don't worry. This is just a small loss. The gods are still on our side, and the victory is determined. Any army that can survive 1/3 of its losses without collapsing is considered elite. Slave warriors are different and cannot be regarded as an army. They have not undergone unified training, do not understand the language, do not know each other, and have no empathy. X.com. Each slave only lives for himself and does not care about the life or death of others. This makes them more brave and ruthless, but also vulnerable. The Gith slave struggled to get up, blood slowly oozing from his waist, and the wound was a cut from a sharp blade on his back. Looking at the slave warriors trampling on each other in front of them, scrambling to climb up the city wall to die. He stood there blankly, not knowing what to do for a moment, but there was a realization in his mind. These people were unreliable. Behind the city wall, the Unsullied fought in a high-level, loose infantry phalanx. This fighting form allowed the warriors to be more flexible and responsive in using daggers, shields, and spears to carry out coordinated attacks. It also ensured that they not too vulnerable to flank attacks. Outside the city wall, the slaves who rushed to the top of the city were just killed by the enemy and pushed down the city wall. The slaves who followed rushed up crazily again. During this period, slaves kept falling and being trampled. On the mound, slaves were piled up in layers, extending to the base of the city wall. A stream of blood slowly flowed under the corpses, making it a purgatory on earth. Seeing the number of slave warriors crowding outside the city wall slowly decreasing, Meng still took his time and had a clear mind to encourage the morale of the roaring warriors of 1,000 Dothraki assembled in formation. Dothraki warriors, I could have led you back to the Dothraki Sea as a victor, but I am not a timid person. The people of Qohor tied the braids of the Dothraki ancestors on their long hair. On the spear, showing off their power, even planting the trees of the forest of Qohor on the grassland of the Dothraki, isn't this a shame? They sent arrogant messengers to my camp, wanting to offer me gold alone, but I don't care. These, capture Qohor, and all the Dothraki will receive gold. This will be a memorial to your bravery. Whoever died, his death will be glorious, and his funeral will be grand. No doubt, this must be regarded as a supreme glory in the Notre Dame mountain, and it must be extremely pious under the gaze of the sky. The Great Khal. Ka'amungo, Kulmungo. The breeze carried fanaticism and swept across the entire Dothraki camp in an instant, and their fierce eyes flashed with the color of hot hope. Meng raised a special long-handled giant scimitar, and the blood boiled in his tall and burly body. I will use the gold of Qohor to forge a golden crown, and I will put the heads of Qohor people on spears. The spear forest is denser than the forest of Qohor. Ka'a is in front, 1,000 warriors are behind, and the fanatical shouts and roars of 70,000 Dothraki tribes follow closely behind. The morale is high and the physical strength is full, like a mountain torrent surging out, moving forward in a mighty manner, carrying an indomitable momentum. Run towards the city wall. The tense and exhausted defenders on the city wall were immediately frightened by the overwhelming sound and the aggressive momentum. It was not until the commander roared that they recovered and drew their bows to fire. Messy arrows flew into the Dothraki military formation, most of which were blocked by the skinned wooden shields. Only a handful of warriors were hit by the arrows. On the mound outside the wall, layers of corpses almost reached the top of the city. An Unsullied one threw a spear. Before he could see whether his spear had hit the target, he saw a tall figure carrying a ray of sword light struck, and his fighting consciousness allowed him to quickly raise his buckler to defend himself. Another companion stepped forward and thrust out his dagger to cooperate with the flanking attack. Click! As the shield shattered, the giant scimitar struck the spiked helmet of the Unsullied. Blood spurted out like a fountain, and a bloody rain fell. Another Unsullied's dagger pierced the skin, but failed to make an inch. Faced with the encircling Unsullied ones, Meng advanced instead of retreating. He waved the long-handled scimitar with his strong arms, exerted force on his waist and abdomen, and swept the sword horizontally. Broken limbs and arms, blood splattered everywhere, tearing apart the Unsullied formation, and the Dothraki who followed swarmed forward. Meng was like a sharp arrow, running rampant, and like a hot blade piercing into cold butter. The calm and strict battle formation of the Unsullied seemed weak under his aggressive and fire-like attack. The sharp blade flashed across the enemy's chest like lightning, directly splitting the Unsullied in front of him into two pieces. However, the fearlessness of the Unsullied in the face of battle was fully demonstrated at this time. They still gathered together to maintain their formation, launched attacks forward, and fought to the death. Now it's time to either kill the Unsullied or find the commander who has control over them. Unfortunately, the cautious garrison commander Salokot gave the order to the Unsullied who stayed behind to defend the city from the moment the Dothraki climbed onto the city wall, and then immediately retreated to the inner city. Chapter 17. Faced with the harsh situation of abandonment, no support, and being flanked on both sides, the Unsullied did not collapse, gave up resistance, and surrendered. Unfortunately, there were not many Unsullied left in the outer city to contain the Dothraki, and the battle did not last long. What to do with these Qohor people? After clearing the city wall and arrow tower, Kosalo saw the Qohor archers and conscripted men who had already knelt down and surrendered, and he didn't know what to do. Meng answer was extremely firm and cold. After collecting their weapons and armor, cut off all their hands and put them back to report to the people of Qohor. Korsoro leaned forward to accept the order. Of course, he would not question Khal's intention in doing so. The Dothraki did not have time to manage the prisoners, and the fact that the Qohor people were able to choose to surrender showed that they still had hope of survival, but they could not make the other party completely despair. Soldiers who cut off their hands would definitely not participate in the battle again. The Qohor people also allocated manpower to take care of these injured soldiers. When the Dothraki attack the inner city, they will face fewer enemies and a more scattered attack. Kosalo, open the city gate and let more troops enter the city. Meng stood on the arrow tower and looked into the city. His blood-red scimitar pointed at the sparkling lake in the city and said, I want you to walk along the corridor of the city wall. Lead troops to seize the lower water gate, and no ships can be released from the city. Qohor City is a group city with a diameter of less than 3 kilometers. It is divided into 2 rings from the inside to the outside, the inner city and the outer city. The inner city is home to the magnificent courtyards of high-ranking nobles and tall, magnificent, and luxurious unknown dome buildings, while the outer city is home to neat ordinary residences and merchant markets. Both the inner city and the outer city have city walls more than 7 meters high. 4 main roads lead to the center of Tuancheng and intersect in the central square of the city like a tianchu. Among them, what is even more eye-catching and unique in the city is that there is a huge artificially dug lake in the southwest. There are some merchant ships docked on the dock. The water is connected to the Qin River outside the city and extends to the inner city. There are several water gates on the walls of the inner and outer cities. If they cannot capture the water gates of the outer city first, the high-ranking nobles can take their property and escape from Qohor City by boat at any time. When Meng, who was covered in blood, walked out of the arrow tower, the roaring Dothraki warriors standing on the city wall burst into strong cheers. They knew that it was under the leadership of this young Khal that a huge victory could be achieved with very few casualties. 400 years later, the Dothraki invaded the city of Qohor, which had once defeated them. Meng raised his eyes and saw that the Dothraki's expression was excited and hot, and his animalistic and ferocious eyes were full of plundering desire. He immediately raised the scimitar in his hand, stepped forward, and shouted. Quiet! The Dothraki were silent. Kolmengo is the strongest and fiercest warrior in the tribe. He has proven himself with a large number of bravery. Meng looked around them and shouted seriously. Look at the roadblocks piled up in the city and the walls in the inner city that are still standing. Could it be that now is the time to harvest the spoils? He pointed his finger at all the Dothraki, and his voice was as cold as iron. You, all of you, must obey my decision and wait for my instructions. I say it again, if anyone questions my decision or my authority, I will definitely cut off his head with my own hands to eliminate all doubts. It is normal for nomads, especially those who are still on the rise, to launch wars, expand their lands, and plunder livestock, slaves, and wealth to supplement themselves. The Dothraki are synonymous with barbarians in the continent of Essos and even the whole world. They do not have the slightest hint of civilization. Massacre of cities and genocide is a traditional habit. But it would be extremely unwise to massacre the civilians of Qohor, plunder property, and burn down houses now. If the Dothraki, who have not yet established a firm foothold in the city, provoke fierce resistance from the nearly 100,000 residents in the city, the blood of the tribe will be drained here today, and the elite of the tribe will also be wiped out in the city. Meng words made the Dothraki surrender and stop the commotion. Then he said again with strong words. Who among you has endured more fatigue and pain than me? Whose honor is more recognized by the gods than me? It is I who lead you so that you can win. In battle, it is I who tear apart the enemy. The tightest formation, killing the most enemies, and how many enemy swords I have endured. Everything is under your gaze, under the gaze of the sky. This is all for your honor and your wealth. Do I the spoils of war are not distributed to you, and the fruits of victory are not given to you to share. Meng saw that the Dothraki's attention was drawn to him, and he said loudly word by word. Capture the inner city. Sooner or later, all the wealth and treasures of Qohor City will be yours. After hearing Khal's promise, the Dothraki cheered loudly, filled the sky with excitement, and became fanatical and restless again. The city wall of the inner city of Qohor is entirely made of stone and is about 8 meters high. Compared with the outer city wall, it not only looks like the flags are brightly colored, the masonry is neat and gorgeous, but it is also stronger and heavier. At the foot of the city wall, there were rows of houses. The Qohor garrison did not demolish or burn these houses, and they did not know whether this would increase the difficulty for the attackers. Since the siren of enemy attack spread throughout the city, the residents of Qohor City have taken refuge in their homes, shivering and praying to the gods. The brave ones will also look out through the gaps in the doors and windows with shrinking pupils. Explore the situation. Seeing that the Dothraki did not loot and massacre after entering the city, their nervous and frightened mood calmed down a little, and they began to destroy the statue of the Black Goat, and kept cursing the soldiers and high-ranking nobles hiding in the inner city. The few people wandering the streets and alleys are homeless beggars and drunkards, always ready to take advantage of the situation when riots break out in the city. When these people actually encountered the menacing Dothraki cavalry, they all wanted to seize the position of the future spear forest. Khal Mongol of the Dothraki Sea, the followers of the Lord of Light pay you homage. The sudden sound in the deserted alley made the Dothraki on guard. The figure gradually emerged, about 7 feet tall, with a red hood on his head, and his whole body, including his round belly as big as a pebble, shrouded in red robes. The Red Monk of Arhillar. Red monks are priest-like characters among the followers of Arhillar, so called because they often wear loose scarlet robes. The Dothraki cavalry rode forward and surrounded the red-robed monks. While Meng revealed the identity of the person, he also tightened the handle of the knife in his hand. In times of war, when the enemy is unknown to us, we must be vigilant. The red-robed monk slowly stretched out his arms and opened his palms, indicating that he had given up resistance and was not carrying a weapon. Accompanied by the Dothraki cavalry holding a scimitar, he lifted off his red hood, revealing his skin as black as pitch, his bone-white beard and hair winding out like the fur of a wild lion, and tattoos of red flames covering his cheeks and forehead. Aegon Targaryen, a slave of Arhillar. Meng cannot be said to be a person who loves reading. Of course, there are no books to read now, but in the past, he often listened to the historical beliefs and geographical customs of the Essos continent from the clerk Ofer. The red-robed monk in front of him, with the prominent flame tattoos on his cheeks and forehead, could be identified as coming from the temple of Arhillar in Volantis. Only the Volantis are proud of their Valyrian descent and generally retain the tradition of tattoos. Only they give tattoos to their slaves to distinguish their purpose and identity. Although followers of Arhillar consider themselves servants or slaves of Arhillar, in reality, being a slave of Arhillar is just one of the many titles that come with being a believer. The temple of Arhillar in Volantis is the largest in the world. The temple will purchase slave children and raise them to become monks or warriors. These devout fanatics born from slaves will tattoo their faces with fire tattoos. Only then are they truly called slaves of Arhillar. The tattooed red-robed monk leaned down to salute and said with a pious expression, "Dear Ka, I am the servant of the Lord of Light, Megiro." Chapter 18. Staring at the rising sun is like a lonely eye. Meng stared calmly at the dark man in front of him. Even when faced with a sharp scimitar, the red-robed monk Makulo showed no fear and always maintained a calm attitude. "Servant of the Lord of Light, has your God shown you a vision of the future?" There was a sense of detachment in Makulo's whole person. There was no emotion at all on his face or in his pupils. The night is dark and dangerous everywhere. The Lord of Light gives the world dawn. Meng waved his hand and sneered indifferently. "Maybe I don't have the ability to resurrect the dead as in the legend, but as long as a person appears in front of me, I can announce his death time at any time, and even his God cannot save him." Megiro did not panic and finished the prayer without expression. Now the believers of the Black Goat are entrenched in the fortress, which is easy to defend and difficult to attack. The holy fire hand of the Lord of Light has led the believers to sneak into the enemy. They can open the city gate while the defense is empty and cooperate with your army inside and outside. The hands of holy fire are the guardians of the Arhillar temple. They were bought and trained as warriors by the temple since they were young. They are called the holy warriors of the Lord of Light. They always maintain a strength of 1,000 people. Only one person who dies will be replenished. Meng did not speak, but relaxed his right hand holding the handle of the knife, and rubbed the riding crop with his left hand. During these times, whether it was a continuous siege or a battle method of forcing the city wall, it almost did not meet his psychological expectations. If he is not careful, he will give the enemy time to counterattack. By then, no one knows how many Dothraki will die in the battle, and maybe his braid will be tied to the spear of the Unsullied. No one who has the upper hand in a war can give the enemy a chance to breathe, otherwise they will find a rhythm and counterattack, and once the momentum changes, it will be difficult to reverse it. This anxiety has been lingering in Meng mind, making him feel very uncomfortable and disgusted. The red-robed monk's proposal really moved his heart until a certain moment. He suddenly clenched the riding whip in his hand, looked at Makulo, and said, "Servant of the Lord of Light, speak your request." Makulo looked calm and gentle, as if everything around him had nothing to do with him, but even a god would have his own demands. After the long summer, the stars weep with blood, and the cold darkness will cover the world. At this terrifying moment, a warrior will pull out the burning sword from the fire. That sword is the bringer of light, the red sword of the hero, who holds the swordsman is the reincarnation of Azor Ahai, and he will drive away the darkness. Meng knew that this passage was based on a prophecy from an ancient book of Asai 5,000 years ago. The King of Light will reborn Azor Ahai, and when darkness falls after the long summer, he will fight against his mortal enemy, the god of cold. Arhilar's religion is similar to dualism. It believes that there are two opposing supreme powers or gods, good and evil, in the world, and only good gods are chosen as objects of worship. These two opposing powers or gods are often expressed in the form of light and darkness, life and death, and the Lord of Light Arhilar is the god of heat and life. His mortal enemy is the cold god, the god of darkness, coldness, and death. There will never be an end between them. The struggle determines the fate of mankind. In silence, Meng looked at the red-robed monk calmly, laughed happily, and said, "Megiro, let's be practical. What do you want?" He knew that Arhilar, the Lord of Light, was the true god and could show people phantoms of the future through fire, and could also grant people some special abilities, such as the ability to resurrect the dead. But now Arhilar's magic has not been restored, and the Lord of Light only believes in a more influential religion. Moreover, the Blood Wizard and the Black Goat god of Qohor also predicted that he will be the king of mankind. Maculo's face was like a sealed black wall, with no cracks visible. He was neither sad nor happy, and his expression remained calm. "Servants of the Lord of Light, I hope that Meng Cao can protect the lives and property safety of the followers of the Lord of Light after the war. At the same time, I hope that a temple of the Lord of Light can be established in the city of Qohor to allow free worship and preaching." After the red-robed monk finished making his request, Meng Ge's face seemed to look better. He hated these preachers who spoke such nonsense and vague language. He rubbed the writing crop in his hand and said, "How many Arhilar followers are there in Qohor?" "Less than 10,000. There are quite a few people. Are there any high-ranking nobles from the inner city among them?" Menga was a little surprised by the influence of Arhilar's faith. No wonder he could organize the burning of statues of local gods, which caused strong dissatisfaction among Black Goat believers. There are no high nobles. Arhilar's faith is also popular among the lower classes in Volantis, the free trade city-state with the largest number of believers. Many believers are slaves or paupers. Meng did not continue to speak, and was buried in thought. After a long time, he raised his head and looked at the red-robed monk calmly, and said seriously, "I swear in the name of the horse god that as long as the followers of Arhilar obey my rule, I will guarantee the safety of their lives and property. After the war is won, the believers of Arhilar will receive meritorious service for their participation in the war. They will be allowed to build a temple in the inner city to preach, but all Arhilar believers in Qohor must be registered. Arhilar believers do not enjoy any privileges in Qohor. If any believer does anything that violates the moral laws of Qohor, they must be dealt with by the city of Qohor, and the priests of the Arhilar temple will also be censured by me." Immediately, he drove his war horse close to the red-robed monk, fixed his majestic eyes on Maculo's eyes, and said, "Servants of the Lord of Light, can you do it?" Megiro lowered his head and tried to clear his mind. Beads of sweat continued to form on his forehead, which seemed to make him very embarrassed, and his heart was full of contradictions. After a long time, he finally raised his head and said seriously, "The servants of the Lord of Light agree to join you in victory, but regarding your request, I also need to report to the supreme priest of the Temple of the Lord of Light in Volantis." Meng looked at the red-robed monk coldly for a long time, seeming to accept this statement, but he didn't seem satisfied. What followed was an unabashed murderous intent. Megiro knew that the Dothraki in front of him was really murderous this time. It was as if a biting cold wind penetrated his body, and cold sweat had already soaked his back. His muscles all over his body were tense and his expression was stiff as he said, "The servant of the Lord of Light is willing to assist you in capturing the city of Qohor first. I will go to Volantis immediately after the war to meet with the supreme priest and convey your request to him. Haha, this is what I want, victory, victory at all costs." The tense silence disappeared in an instant. Menga's face beamed with joy, he laughed and patted Maculo's shoulder and said, "As long as you can help me capture Qohor, my promise to the believers of the King of Light in the city will always be valid. As long as your supreme priest can comply with my requirements, my promise to preach will also be valid. In fact, Meng has no good opinion of all the gods in the Essos continent or even this world. And he firmly believes that only gods who can be used by him are bright and kind gods. He didn't believe that our healer's power could resurrect all believers, so he could let him try if he had the chance. After thinking about these problems, Meng gently asked the Dothraki to bring a war horse. After the red-robed monk Makulo got on his horse, he smiled kindly and said to him, "Now, we can have a good talk about the safety of the holy fire hands and believers lurking in the inner city. They are all good people under my rule and my meritorious ministers. You don't know how worried I am. The sooner they win, the sooner their safety will be guaranteed." Chapter 19. Thousands of miles of blue sky, white clouds are like silver waves rolling in the sea, with overlapping layers. Meng sat on the battlement, looking at the big clouds in the sky. After getting used to the bloody days of riding horses and killing people, the tranquility in the trance actually made him a little distracted. It wasn't until he remembered that he had just rejected the proposal of the red-robed monk Makulo that his heart suddenly became heavy. When will all the heroes in the world come to my rescue? Talents are in short supply. He must personally sit in the city of Khal to suppress the Dothraki arrogant soldiers and maintain law and order, while Kosalo needs to lead his troops to guard the water gate of the outer city. The frail old man Ofer, who had just rested for a while, was called out again. He still needed to urgently deal with the remaining problems after the war outside the city wall. Otherwise, given the current hot weather, the consequences can be imagined. Now there is no one to deal with the affairs in the city, so we can only let nature take its course and maintain the status quo. If they agree to the red-robed monk's proposal to appease the residents of the city, then it's hard to say whether Qohor will still belong to the Dothraki after the war. Ah, talent! Meng weakly shook his riding whip and jumped off the battlement. While exercising, I can clearly feel the pain relieved from wounds all over my body and the itching caused by healing. Thanks to the physical strengthening of the noble Phantasm 12 trials, the enemy's vigorous blow can leave a wound on his body. The wound that would normally take more than 10 days to heal for him only takes a short time. It can be cured in just a few hours. With a heavy heart, Meng walked down the city wall. "Ka, there is a familiar slave who wants to see you." At the gate of the city, the pale-faced clerk Ofo was still smiling, and beside him stood a tall man with wounds all over his body. The old man walked forward slowly, approached Menga and whispered, "The number of our sacrifices has been counted. Out of the 3,000 slave warriors, less than 400 have survived. This Geth is the only slave who brought back 3 enemy heads for you. According to the agreement, between you and him the debt has been written off, but he has other ideas. He wants to use these 3 heads to exchange for the freedom of his wife and children. You have promised him." Naturally, Menga would not forget it, and then nodded, carefully looking at the Geth in front of him. This man has an angular face, a pair of clear black eyes, a broad nose that is unique to the Geth, amber skin, and short, straight reddish-brown hair that hangs upward. The blood stains all over his body give him the feeling of an unyielding fighter. "My promise is always valid." Menga had an impression of the Geth people he had met in the slave camp. He stared seriously into the slave's eyes, repeated his last words, and said word for word, "A woman, 2 boys." The Geth man's tense expression immediately relaxed. Although he couldn't understand Dothraki, he could understand everything from Kaa's eyes and mouth movements. When Ofer translated Khal's words into High Valyrian and told him, the Geth finally grinned and smiled happily. Menga turned sideways to the officer in charge of translation and said, "Ask him what his name is and which city-state in Essos he comes from." The Geth people also had a glorious history. The Giskalai Empire, one of the oldest nations and civilizations in the world, ruled most of Essos. The symbol of the empire was the symbol of the Geth people, the eagle. A succubus. Thousands of years ago, Valyria discovered dragons and rose rapidly. Later, with the help of dragons, they destroyed the Giscari Empire. The Valyrian people sprinkled every inch of Geth's land with salt, alkali, and sulfur. And dry bones, lest any survivors return. Due to the destruction of the Empire of Geth, most of the Orthodox Geth bloodline ceased to exist, but those who are still half-blood Geth call themselves the Geth, and they have risen again in the remote Slavers' Bay. As the Geth slaves eagerly sputtered long passages of High Valyrian, old man Ofer's brows furrowed as he listened. After a moment, he was able to sort out his thoughts in his mind, and the translator added. "His name is Bezuk, and he comes from the island city-state of New Gis. This city is located in the southern part of Slavers Bay, on a small island in the Gulf of Sorrow. It is the most symbolic, smallest, and youngest city of the Geth people. Zach was once a free citizen of New Geth and served in the Iron Legion of New Geth for over 12 years. Due to Ofer's poor physical condition, he paused for a breath before reluctantly continuing to add. In the heyday of the Giscari Empire, they were most famous for their highly disciplined legions, which were known as being undefeated. In order to be in line with the Giscari Empire, which has a glorious history, New Geth also fought with legions, called the Iron Legion. In addition to apart from their status as warriors, their training and equipment are similar to those of the Unsullied. After listening to the translation and supplement of the clerk Ofer, Menga's eyes suddenly became extremely hot when he looked at the Geth Bazuk. No wonder this man was the only one who could bring back 3 heads. At the same time, he also noticed Bazuk's anxious expression, so he could only considerately give up the idea of having a long chat with him, and then said in a kind manner. What a brave warrior! Take him to see his wife and children as soon as possible. Be sure to send someone to take care of their family. Then he turned to Ofer and whispered. This is a talent. Find a way to keep him playing for me. The blazing sun is like the cryptic language of life, bursting out with power to cleanse the sins of the world. In the inner city of Qohor, the Unsullied Guard stood under the city wall and stopped a tall and serious man with platinum hair and sapphire eyes. Please help me tell the garrison commander Salokot, the scribe of the High Council of Nobles, to ask for an audience. The man was well-spoken, his delicate and handsome appearance was as sharp as a knife and an axe, and his voice was as warm and pure as gurgling water. Aslan McKinnon. At this moment, the gloomy-looking garrison commander Salo Porter slowly walked down the city wall and called out the man's name. Even though the war had many dissatisfactions, when he saw the handsome man in front of him, he still felt that he should cherish the beautiful life he had now. Aslan McKinnon was born into a noble Lysian noble. Looking at his appearance, you can tell that he has pure and strong Valyrian blood, especially his enviable smooth and fair skin. It is said that he was once a famous artist and sculptor in Rees. The painted marble boy statue in the courtyard of the high nobles of Qohor was the work of Aslan, and it once became a hot topic of praise among the nobles in the inner city. It's a pity that gods always play tricks on mortals easily. The McKinnon family lost in the political struggle in Lys, and Aslan changed from a noble man to a lowly slave who could be sold at will. During the circulation auction, he was bought by the high-ranking nobles of Qohor city. Because of his excellent background and conversation, he quickly became a teacher in the residence of the high-ranking nobles. When the war between Qohor and the Dothraki broke out, Aslan served as scribe to the High Council of Qohor's nobles. Thinking of this, Salokot felt that even if the war was more difficult, he would still be happy. So his steps became much more brisk, he stepped forward and pushed away the Unsullied Guards, and said with a smile. Aslan, if there is something important, I have to patrol the city defense. A voice as clear as spring water reached everyone's ears. Aslan said unhurriedly and politely. Before dusk, a meeting of high nobles will be held in my master's courtyard. Please be sure to attend on time. Chapter 20. The afterglow of the setting sun dyes the flowing clouds in the sky red, and gradually drifts away with the sparse wind. The courtyards of the high nobility were located right next to the lake in the inner city. At this time, the magnificent sunset blended perfectly with the color of the water in the lake, making it look dazzling. Several commercial flat-bottomed boats with deep drafts were docked motionlessly at the crowded small pier. I would rather trust those mercenaries who lack loyalty and have no discipline at all than trust the high-ranking nobles with noble blood and extremely pious people. The mocking tone and overly dismissive attitude of the garrison commander of Qohor, Salokot, made his servants panic. They quickly turned around and looked around to prevent their master's lies from being overheard. The high-ranking nobles will definitely connect the fall of the outer city with his drunkenness at the banquet, and hold him accountable. But he still had to bow his head and admit his mistake first to safeguard the power in his hands. The fate of Qohor could not be left in the hands of high-ranking nobles. He forced himself to smile, but found that there was no respect at all. He was concentrating on practicing how to smile, but he couldn't notice the loyal servant who turned his back, the twinkling eyes in his pupils, and the coldness in his fearful eyes. Outside the courtyard, Salokot looked at the Unsullied Guards around the mansion, and then walked calmly into the courtyard with a 12-foot-high brick wall. Walking through the ivy garden and flower trees in the yellow halo, you can see the setting sun reflected in the marble pool, and the painted boy statue with a touch of blood-red light. I heard the dogs in the backyard kennel stopped barking. In the courtyard, the handsome and elegant conference scribe, Aslan McKinnon, was waiting quietly and calmly outside the hall. After seeing Slowcoat coming from a distance, he hurried forward to greet him. With a serious face, but an extremely considerate tone, he pulled him and advised. Your Excellency, the Master, and the members of the meeting are still in panic that the outer city has fallen into the hands of the enemy. I may have made some extreme remarks. Please forgive me. Hearing this, Slowcoat's cold heart felt slightly comforted, and an embarrassing smile appeared on his face. Thank you, Aslan, you have always encouraged me. At the banquet, you were the only one who tried to stop me from drinking and regretting following your advice. And I know that if it weren't for your help and mediation, this discussion about accountability would not be possible. The meeting on my dereliction of duty has already been held. As if he felt that what he had done was not good enough, Aslan's eyes were filled with apologies to his best friend, and the words he spoke in a clear voice were warm enough to soothe people's hearts. Solo, I'm sorry. If I could have prevented you from getting drunk last night, I would have prevented the outer city from falling into the hands of the Dothraki. It's all because I wasn't firm enough. Having said this, Aslan's handsome and fair face showed hesitation and confusion. After a moment of pause, he seemed to finally make up his mind. In fact, my little master is very dissatisfied with the fact that you directly relieved his command and management authority after you took office. The master and the members of the meeting also issued an order to you to relieve the command authority of the cohort officers. There were complaints, and the High Noble Council believed that this was your arbitrary and authoritarian behavior, and it was also one of the important reasons for the fall of the outer city. The blood in Slowcoat's head surged up, his face turned red, he clenched his fists, and rushed toward the conference hall angrily. However, he was stopped by the Unsullied outside the hall door with a spear. Aslan quickly stepped forward to mediate and persuade. Slow, since the fall of the outer city, your authority has been restricted. Now you can no longer go in directly to attend the meeting. You need to take a physical examination here and wait for the pass. Slowcoat was full of grievances and anger that he wanted to vent. In the end, they can only be reduced to nothing under the emotionless eyes and sharp blades of the Unsullied. His face was pale, and he was physically and mentally weak as he accepted the body search of the slave. Slow, I'm sorry. Aslan, immersed in guilt and remorse, walked into the conference hall alone to report. It was a long time before Slowcoat was authorized to attend the meeting. The hall is no longer decorated with white candles. The women's laughing voices and the lingering scent of perfume in the air feel like they are from another world. The set of tapestries, which could be considered a family heirloom, also disappeared without a trace. Slowcoat, you poor, stupid, blind fool. The owner of the courtyard, who was short, stout, and bald, was still covered in perfume to cover up his disgusting smell of urine. He stood up tremblingly, shouted loudly and took the lead in attacking. Bitter hatred and anger filled Slowcoat's heart, but he had to suppress and endure everything, showing a far-fetched smile. It was just his forced smile and the unconcealable resentment in his eyes that made the high-ranking nobles very annoyed. It was they who gave the power of city defense to Slowcoat. This person seriously neglected his duties. Not only was he drunk and caused the outer city to be lost and fell to the enemy, he also dared to accuse the noble council of being untrustworthy in public. He is arrogant and ignorant and looks down on them. Isn't he himself a member of the high nobility? Thinking of this, the other high-ranking nobles could no longer sit still and came out to criticize. Do you, the Kurt family, have any self-esteem? You are arrogant, greedy, and obsessed with power. Yes, his dead father was severely punished by the Black Goat God because of his greed and obsession with witchcraft. It's just a family of monsters. The evil words hurt people's hearts, and the forced smile froze on Slowcoat's face for an instant. Under the dim light, it was undoubtedly a ferocious face. You guys are fat, degenerate, lacking in faith, out-and-out morons, idiots who only think about power and wealth. You call me a pitiful and stupid fool. Yes, if I were smarter, I should have you. Sell them all to the Dothraki, and maybe I can be replaced by Governor Qohor, who will call me a monster. Yes, I will definitely execute you idiots who are heinous and deserve your crimes, and then... Slowcoat's eyes were blood red, a vicious grin was etched on his face, and he let out a desperate roar. He hasn't finished venting yet. Clang, clang. The sound of chairs falling over, accompanied by wine glasses, silver plates, and fruits being spilled, made the high-ranking nobles tumble to the ground. There was a sharp pain in their abdomens, as if they were being stabbed by a hot sharp blade, and heart-rending howls came from their mouths. After the remaining members of the meeting looked at each other, they stood up in horror, pointed at Slowcoat in shock, and shouted hysterically. "You traitor, you actually despicably poisoned us! Guards, guards, take this man down!" Hearing the screams, the heavily armed Unsullied immediately rushed into the house, surrounded Slowcoat with spears, and then stepped forward and knocked him to the ground. Slowcoat lay weakly on the ground. He did not resist, but opened his mouth wide and looked at the nobles who fell to the ground in shock through the bottom of the table, his face full of disbelief. "Doctor, call the doctor quickly." Aslan, the scribe of the noble meeting who has always maintained a serious face, rigorous style, and calm expression. At this moment, he also had a look of confusion and helplessness on his face. He stumbled forward, hugging the body of the owner of the courtyard in panic, and shouted loudly with a hoarse voice. Chapter 21. The setting sun sets through the dome in the conference hall. The doctor who came with the guards saw a feast of death. The high-ranking nobles were staggering beside the overturned chairs, and cups, silver plates, and food were scattered all over the floor. Under the gaze of everyone, Scribe Aslan carefully handed over the owner of the courtyard in his arms to the hooded doctor, and then slumped down on the ground, his eyes dull, as if the owner's unfortunate death had completely broken his heart. Cool. Seeing this scene in front of them, the nobles who survived the murder felt terrified and extremely angry in their hearts, and they clamored crazily to execute the conspirator Slowcoat immediately. In a daze, Aslan seemed to hear the voices of the nobles. He staggered up in despair and walked forward in a shaky manner. He sighed sadly, regained his previous rigorous and wise attitude, and reminded him with all his heart. "My lords, it's great that you are all right. The gods are also blessing Qohor. Please take control of the inner city defense as soon as possible to avoid giving lawbreakers and Dothraki an opportunity." After hearing this reminder, the nobles turned pale with fright and glared angrily at the sinner Slowcoat. Soon, they each responded quickly. "Aslan, the betrayer Slowcoat, he plotted to murder your master insidiously and viciously. The High Noble Council will definitely not let him go. The courtyard is entrusted to you first. The situation is urgent. We still need to go and provide for Kot Hall City's future contribution." The surviving nobles left their instructions in an understated manner, then showed impatient looks and hurriedly left the conference hall. From their eyes that originally only revealed fear and cowardice, they suddenly exuded eager and greedy looks. It can be guessed that they are so eager, I am afraid that they are not simply contributing to the city of Qohol. After the surviving nobles left, only the hooded doctor was left in the conference hall, still moving silently to examine the corpse. The entire hall fell into wordless silence. Under the dome, the glow and dusk fell on everyone, forming a strange and harmonious picture. This is the tears of Rhys." The doctor's exclamation awakened the silence. The sinner Slowcoat, who was being guarded by the Unsullied, suddenly raised his head, with intricate colors in his confused eyes. He knew about the tears of Lys, a very rare and expensive poison. It is said that its taste is as sweet as water and can be dissolved in wine or water. It cannot be smelled or tasted. The poison will disturb the stomach of the poisoned person and cause death like intestinal disease without leaving any trace. "Aslan McKinnon, did you do this?" Slowcoat asked impatiently. "The friendship between nobles and slaves is as fragile as a dead leaf. It will be crumbling when the wind blows." As the name suggests, the tears of Lys were naturally invented by the alchemists of Lys, and Aslan McKinnon, who seemed to have nothing to do with it, was also a pure-blood Lysian. Loyalty is noble and respectable because it is unparalleled. The handsome and elegant Lysian neither stood up to admit nor deny anything. The inexplicable words coming out of his mouth made Slowcoat confused. Opening the closed door of the conference hall, the pure and rich fiery red twilight gently fell on Aslan's body. He held his head high, as if he had given up everything here, and walked calmly out of the conference hall. "Answer me, Aslan, how dare you murder your master? Damn slave, let me go." Under the control of the guards, Slowcoat struggled in embarrassment and roared. He also thoroughly experienced the characteristics of the Unsullied who absolutely obeyed orders. The Kurt family, one of the families in the city-state of Qohor, holds the secrets of Valyrian steel weapon reforging technology. After calling out Poison's true name, the hooded doctor who had remained silent suddenly opened his mouth to speak. He slowly walked up to Slowcoat and slowly took off his hood with one hand, revealing a pale and terrifying face. "You are the Blood Witch Base Potter. You did it, right? Are you going to sacrifice the life of a high-ranking noble to the Black Goat to protect Qohor?" Hearing Salokot's exclamation, the blood wizard did not answer the question directly, but still talked to himself. I remember that I had the honor of meeting your father 3 times. After saying that, Blood Witch Base Potter turned around, picked a clean chair with interest, sat on it with a smile, and continued. The first time I met your father was, by the way, at that time, I was not called Base Potter, and others would call me Maester Ball, a man from the city across the narrow sea, living in Qohor. Maester, at that time, I was preparing to write a thesis on the foundry technology of Qohor, and because I asked too many questions in the investigation, I was publicly whipped 3 times and subsequently driven out of the city. The last time I saw you was my father. He accused me of stealing a Valyrian steel weapon and chopped off one of my hands as punishment. The Blood Witch Buzz Potter proudly stretched out the flexible prosthesis on his right hand to show off. You know what secret I discovered that time? Your father has been working hard all his life to create weapons comparable to Valyria's forging craftsmanship. What a great ideal! But he only has Valyria controlled by the Kurt family. The reforging technology of sub-steel weapons is not enough. You must master the forging process of Valyrian steel. All forging craftsmen use repeated forging to balance and remove impurities from the steel. Valyrian steel also needs only by applying some unknown crafts, such as magic spells, can magic make this kind of steel extremely special, but your father insists that blood sacrifice is the most special forging process in Valyrian steel. Salokot's father passed away when he was young. This was the first time someone told him his father's story. His family and even other nobles in Qohor were very reserved when it came to his father. The blood wizard stared curiously at Salokot, who stopped struggling and roaring, with a look of desire on his face, and bowed his head to listen. He stood up slowly, stepped forward and touched the other person's lips with his prosthetic leg, and then continued with a smile. Sure enough, you are just like your father. He looks completely human on the surface, but on the inside he is arrogant, cold-blooded and cruel. He is only interested in things that he approves of. You know what blood sacrifice is, but you don't think there is any problem at all. Your father the same is true. He killed slaves for blood sacrifices, and some of them were just babies. Therefore, I often feel that I am incompatible with you. Salokot wanted to retort, but found that there was no sound at all in his throat, and he covered his neck in panic. Blood Witch Base Potter ignored him, sat back on the chair again, and said with a smile. Since you just didn't want to defend the blood sacrifice and say something pleasant to the dead, then you don't have to say nonsense anymore. You just need to listen to me quietly. It seemed that the interruption of the story made the Blood Witch forget what he wanted to express. After pondering for a moment, he continued. The secret blood sacrifice did not have any effect. The craftsmen of the Kurt family expressed their opinions. They believed that forging Valyrian steel required dragon bones as a material. However, your father insisted that the spell that was a blood sacrifice was wrong and was the blood of slaves. Not noble and pure enough. Base Potter seemed to be completely immersed in memories and murmured. My maester's necklace has 5 links, made of bronze, silver and gold. In addition, I have also been involved in the study of occult magic. Unfortunately, I failed to get the links. This is also the beginning of my freedom. The reason why I traveled to the city-state was for revenge and to get exposed to the forging craftsmanship of Qohor. This knowledge made it easy for me to disguise myself as the famous Blood Witch Base Potter. Soon your father found me and wanted me to help. He studied the blood sacrifice spell together, which was our second meeting, but he had already ruthlessly forgotten me as a cripple from his memory. It was also during that period that I deliberately misled him and made him crazy about the mysterious witch technique. Bachelors are scholars, physicians, and scientists who study and train in the school city of Westeros on the other side of the narrow sea. Students who have just begun their education in the school city are called apprentices. They need to win the links on the necklace to become bachelors. These links are made of metals known to man. Each metal represents a certain field of knowledge. Bronze represents astronomy and astrology, silver represents medicine, gold represents economics, and the counterpart of arcane magic is Valet. Links cast from Leah steel. They are proof that the city recognizes the bachelor's attainments in this field. If there are repeated metals on the links, it means that the bachelor has studied the field very deeply. The Blood Witch's whispers drove the speechless Salokot crazy, but Base Potter ignored him and continued. The gods will always tease mortals to please themselves. Just after your father became obsessed with mysterious witchcraft, one day, he came to me almost crazy and claimed that the black goat answered his sacrificial prayers and gave him everything he desired. A Lysian merchant came to Qohor with 2 Valyrian weapons, looking for craftsmen who could reforge the 2 weapons. One of the weapons was a Valyrian steel scimitar with a hilt made entirely of dragon bones. That Lysian man has platinum blonde hair, sapphire-like eyes, and fair and delicate skin. He is a very conspicuous and powerful Valyrian blood. There is no noble blood more suitable for blood sacrifices. Having said this, the Blood Witch Bass Potter woke up from his memories. He stood up and came to the ferocious-looking Solo coat, stared into his eyes and said, "The Kurt family deserves to die, and every high-ranking nobleman lying on the ground deserves to die. They bleed sinful blood, commit evil crimes, and are heinous. They just lack capable people to avenge them." They all participated in that scene. For a blood sacrifice to break the art of Valyrian steel forging, and now the Lysian merchant's son comes to take revenge on them. With a final roar, the blood wizard threw his head back and laughed, then turned his back and left the conference hall. At this time, the setting sun dyed the western sky red without leaving any space, and the blood red soaked the lake surface and turned into an eternal memory. It was extremely beautiful. Bass Potter walked out of the conference hall, and the remaining rays of the sun gave his pale face a little more color. In the courtyard, the son of a Reese merchant was standing quietly under the flower tree, admiring the painted marble statue of a boy. His clothes have also been changed from robes to gorgeous armor. He holds a spear with a tip shaped like a burning flame in his hand, and has an orange cape tied behind him. He looks even more heroic. "Why, before you leave, you want to appreciate your carvings one last time. You can make a request to Khal. According to the tradition of the Dothraki, you give him the city of Qohor as a gift. Khal will definitely give you a generous gift in return." Aslan turned around easily and confidently, and bowed respectfully to the Blood Witch. His handsome and elegant face no longer looked mature and serious, but just like other teenagers of his age, he smiled brightly. "Teacher, thank you. I haven't told you yet. This sculpture is actually the boy I remember. At that time, our family was still living happily in Reese." Seeing that the student's sad past was inadvertently brought up, Bass Potter quickly changed the subject. "This is the gorgeous decoration of the Hand of the Holy Fire. You are truly a holy warrior of the Lord of Light. Unfortunately, I arrived too late that year, which is why you were bought by the Temple of Arhilla and you have been treated as a warrior to participate in cruel events. Train." After saying this, the Blood Wizard immediately wanted to slap himself. There seemed to be no happy past events in his student's life worth recalling. Aslan knew his teacher, so he didn't care at all, and a brighter smile bloomed on his face. He reached out and patted the knife and sword tied behind his back, and said, "Let us open the city gates and welcome the Dothraki army into the city. I will use these 2 Valyrian steel weapons as a gift to offer my loyalty to the King of Men, and my father's ideals that I need to realize." The Blood Wizard stared at the Valyrian steel sword behind the boy and sighed sadly. He also knew his student, so he could only say helplessly, "Is this the truth? Walking out of this courtyard, killing the boy in your heart, and shouldering the responsibility of the family, how unfair the gods are." Chapter 22. The night is thickly smeared on the sky, blindfolding the eyes of mortals, and the burning torches complement each other, shining like day, breaking free from the shackles of the night. At this time, fire suddenly appeared in the inner city of Qohor. In an instant, shouts of killing and screams resounded throughout the city. The increasingly clear and audible sound of the collision of iron tools made the war horses under the Dothraki's crotches no longer calm and started to stir. The night is dark and dangerous everywhere. Meng held the riding crop tightly in one hand and drew the long-handled scimitar from the horse's back with the other hand, concentrating on observing the movements in the city of Qohor. He ignored the red-robed monk Megiro beside him, who was chanting a prayer into the flames, praying for Arhilla to grant him strength. Beep. Accompanied by the sonic boom caused by violent friction, the thick gate of the inner city was slowly opened. Meng clenched his fists excitedly, thinking that the victory was settled. Unexpectedly, an arrow flew from behind, catching him off guard and hitting the person who opened the door in the back. The gatekeepers reacted quickly and rushed forward to kill the remaining traitors on the spot. The excitement came to an abrupt end, and countless orders emerged in his mind, leaving him completely at a loss as to what to say. He put down the riding crop in midair with some surprise. As he watched, the city gate, which could allow one person to pass through the gap, had been opened, and the gatekeepers who were about to arrive were closing it with all their strength. Meng was stunned for a moment, and then an idea flashed in his mind. He shook the riding whip in his hand and shouted at the same time. Rush up and push open that damn city door. After saying that, they galloped out at the lead. The fat red horse was like an arrow shot from a bow, chasing the wind and lightning towards the city. Arrives in an instant. Looking at the nearly closed city gate, Meng anxiously jumped up from his horse and slammed his body into the city gate. The huge twist of force caused the war horse to neigh tragically, and the horse turned sideways and fell heavily to the ground. Boom! It was like a black wave breaking through a blockage, and the powerful impact directly slammed half of the city gate open. The violent vibration also made Meng feel dizzy, with a slight tingling sensation in his head. Then the severe pain that shot through his body brought him back to consciousness instantly. Looking around, he saw a warrior whose appearance did not look like a Dothraki. Following him, he jumped off the timid horse and charged towards the city gate with a brave step. Under the firelight, it can be seen that this person is a big man with tan skin and a strong build. His exposed broad chest and big belly are covered with scars. He has an extremely long arak scimitar on his waist. Arms as thick as tree trunks were struggling to push the other half of the city gate. With just one glance, Meng realized that the strong man's brain was not working very well. In a hurry, he pulled out the arak scimitar from the strong man's waist, made way for the empty door he was in, rushed behind the other half of the city gate, raised the knife in his hand, and chopped down the shocked and frightened gatekeepers. Rumble! The Dothraki cavalry rushed into the city with a devastating attitude. At this moment, the battle in the city was coming to an end. The entry of the Dothraki into the city directly shattered all the morale of the soldiers defending the city, and they fled in all directions. The Unsullied obey the command and kneel down. Those who surrender and kneel will not be killed. Meng stood quietly and contentedly on the dark red ground, looking in the direction where the voice of persuasion to surrender came from. A group of armored warriors were running and shouting among the soldiers defending the city. The leader of the warriors was a gorgeous warrior whose face could not be seen clearly with a visor. He held up a black stick like a scepter in his right hand. Wherever he went, the soldiers they all knelt down on one knee and lowered their heads. Although a lot of Dothraki cavalry had already poured into the city, the gorgeous warriors had sharp eyes. They quickly identified their target among the Dothraki crowd and rushed straight towards him. Mengo's majestic body is like a mountain, and the fervent hope that other Dothraki people throw at him is just like a pearl in the dark night, dazzling and eye-catching. Under his deep and far-sighted gaze, the gorgeous warrior calmly took off his face armor, revealing his handsome and elegant face. He knelt down on one knee in submission, held the scepter in both hands and offered it respectfully, bowed his head and said, "The great Dothraki Mongol welcomes you to the city of Qohor, and the people of Qohor offer you their loyalty." The head of the black goat-shaped staff is made of iron, and the body of the staff is engraved with unknown patterns. Regardless of the workmanship, the staff is a tool that symbolizes power. Meng stretched out his hand without hesitation and firmly grasped the scepter that symbolized the command power of the Unsullied. This scene happened to fall into the eyes of Makhuluo, the red-robed monk who had just stepped into the city. The flames reflected in his eyes, shining with a mysterious light, and no one noticed it. Meng who was attentive, also noticed the orange cloak hanging behind the warrior and the spear with a tip like a burning flame at his feet. He knew that this person was the hand of the holy fire hidden in the inner city. "You are a believer of our healer." Menga's face became serious. He turned to look at the red-robed monk Magiro, pondered for a moment, seemed to have figured something out, and then smiled gently at the warrior. "Will the servants of gods and the holy warriors of the temple also bow down to the king of mankind?" Hearing this, the gorgeous warrior raised his head in astonishment and deliberately avoided Kaa's eyes. However, he did not avoid the question in his words and responded directly. "The King of Light can only worship the one God, but you only need to believe in God with your heart. All believers in God do not have divinity, they are just mortals, and all mortals must maintain respect for the human king. In the light before the king calls us to serve, we still need to live under your protection, Kaa, and we are all your people." After saying this, Kaa still smiled and said nothing. The look in the warrior's eyes became more determined. He looked straight and continued with conclusive words. "As long as your scimitar is sharp enough, your armor is hard enough, and your warriors are as loyal as blood and as lush as the Dothraki sea, they will surely be able to withstand the darkness and cold, and break through the flames to determine life." After hearing these words, Meng laughed loudly and said, "My warrior, what is your name?" "Aslan, Aslan Makanan." The warrior replied quickly. Mengo did not respond directly. He stepped around the warrior, raised the scepter in his hand, used temporary control, and shouted in the few Valyrian languages. Unsullied, heed the command, stand up and pick up your weapons. In front of him, they were uniform, sonorous and powerful, and the whole was like an army, like a precision machine. Meng felt extremely safe and trustworthy, and continued to shout. Follow my order and kill all the cohort soldiers defending the city. With the exclamations and screams coming from his ears, Meng turned back and stared at Aslan, who had a stunned and complicated expression. He knew what he knew, nodded with a smile, and said, I once faced the Holy Mother Mountain, swore to the womb lake of the world, and swore to the horse god that if the city of Qohor is not willing to open the city and surrender to me, all the Black Goat believers will be slaughtered when the city is broken. Now, can you by opening the city, I am willing to forgive the hundreds of thousands of innocent people of Qohor in the outer city. This is already my greatest gift. Facing Aslan, who looked pale and hesitated to speak, Meng waved his hand, indicating that he should not give advice. Then he walked towards the Dothraki cavalry behind him. Dothraki warriors, I once promised you that if we capture Qohor, all the Dothraki will receive gold. I will share the wealth and treasures of the inner city of Qohor with you. The Dothraki became wildly agitated upon hearing Khal's promise of war. Listening to the thunderous cheers, Meng said loudly word by word. Close the city gates and I allow you to plunder the inner city of Qohor all night until the first light of dawn shines. Oaths and promises are formal and serious matters, especially the oaths made by the gods of mountains and rivers, and the promises made to the soldiers under his command, which are the spirit of the contract that must be fulfilled. Be true to your words and be resolute in your actions, otherwise your words will become worthless. Chapter 23. The continent of Essos spans greatly from east to west. Its true area is unknown, and there are no maps that can depict the entire continent. It is precisely because the continent is too large that the world uses the Skeleton Mountains on the east side of the Dothraki Sea as the boundary to divide the continent into Western Essos and Eastern Essos. Among them, only Thiassos is truly known to the world. When talking about any history and culture of Thiassos, the Valyrian freehold can never be avoided. It is the most advanced civilization currently known in the world, and its capital, Valyria, is the greatest city in the known world and the center of the civilized world. The freehold of Valyria is a slave city-state. Although it is sometimes called an empire for convenience, it is neither a kingdom nor an empire. Those who are born free and own land have a say in its governance. In fact, the empire is ruled by 40 Dragon King families who are extremely wealthy, noble in birth, and have strong magical abilities and can control dragons. Within the gleaming walls of the capital city of Valyria, 40 rival families are engaged in an endless, vicious, cunning, bloody, and cruel struggle for power and glory around the right to rule. All glory must come to an end, and the rise and fall of great powers is a common historical phenomenon. The empire of blood and fire ended in blood and fire. The doom of Valyria, a catastrophe with unknown causes. In an instant, the proudest city in the world ceased to exist, and the dream empire it built collapsed. The only group of dragon kings to successfully escape the apocalypse are the Targaryens. Before the end of the world, they fled to the continent of Westeros on the other side of the narrow sea, where they lived for more than a century. Until Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters rode dragons to conquer Westeros and started a dynasty that would rule for nearly 300 years. After the doomsday, the empire collapsed, leaving a huge power vacuum, and its colonies and conquered lands gained independence. Since then, the continent of West Essos has been experiencing social turmoil for nearly a century, falling into a melee of mutual attacks. History calls this period the century of bloodshed. The nomadic tribes from the east, the Dothraki, invaded in large numbers and were invincible. The kingdom of Salar and other countries, colonies, and city-states were conquered and destroyed one after another. At this time, Volantis, the first colony established by the Valyrians, proclaimed itself the heir to the empire, determined to conquer the world and rebuild the freehold empire. But before the conquest was even half over, this move immediately caused a huge backlash. In the water battle of Dagger Lake, Novos and Qohor teamed up to defeat Volantis and destroy its power in the upper reaches of the Rhoynar River. Riots also broke out in the conquered areas to resist the rule. The various forces took turns to intervene and entered the war forcefully, causing Volantis to return with a great defeat. This costly, long, and failed military operation prompted an internal coup, and the great cause of conquest ended miserably. All the way to the west, the Dothraki, who were invincible, also encountered the stubborn resistance of the Unsullied under the city of Qohor and suffered heavy losses. With the defeat of Volantis and the first successful resistance of the Dothraki, the chaos of the Bloody Century gradually subsided, forming the current political situation in Thiassos. The mother of the Valyrian Empire left 9 independent political systems in the eastern continent, namely the 9 free city-states, 8 of which are descendants of Valyrian colonists. Unlike the other free cities, Braavos has never been part of the Valyrian freehold. It was a city-state founded by refugees escaping Valyrian enslavement when the Valyrian Empire still existed. About 800 years ago, the rowing slaves in a Valyrian fleet launched an uprising. After they seized the fleet, they were unable to resist the rule of the empire, so they could only stay away from the influence of the Valyrian people and cross the narrow sea to the north. Fleeing, he finally came to the northwest corner of the Essos continent, an archipelago and saltwater lagoon that is often hidden by thick fog. For a century after Braavos was founded, its existence was unknown until the owners of the runaway slaves were dead, and they sent ships to invite all nations to Braavos to celebrate the 111th anniversary of its founding. At the same time, the city-state bank Iron Bank, as a representative, launched diplomacy with the Valyrian Free Fortress and offered huge compensation to the Empire to cover the losses caused by taking away the fleet that year. But Braavos refused to pay the price their ancestors were worth as slaves, and the city's builders paid with their lives for freedom, swearing that no one in Braavos would ever become a slave. Opposing all forms of slavery is the first iron law of Braavos. For this reason, they have launched many wars with slave city-states and their allies. It was these wars that created an invincible fleet that guarded their world-famous Purple Fleet. Eventually, Braavos became the mysterious, powerful, and richest free city-state, and the wealth and influence of the Iron Bank were known to the world. Late at night, under the firelight, the lake dock in the inner city of Khal looks like daytime. Dothraki cavalry and the Unsullied surrounded the place, because the merchant ships docked at the dock were full of the wealth of Khor's high nobles. "Dear Khal, please forgive me, you absolutely cannot accept the allegiance of the person in front of you. That is Braavos, the city of secrets, the illegitimate daughter of Valyria, the most special of the 9 free trade city-states. The most powerful city-state." The secret hidden behind the truth triggered a violent reaction from the clerk Ofer, who kept casting angry glances at Aslan. Mungo turned a deaf ear to him, remained silent, and studied the Valyrian steel sword in his hand expressionlessly. Any Valyrian steel weapon is hard to come by, and they almost all have their own names or legendary stories. And the heirloom that Aslan presented to him, one of them is a Valyrian steel sword. Its name is the truth. Its story is not only the legend of a person, or the biography of a sword. Behind the truth lies the historical rise and fall of a 1,000-year-old family. After a moment of silence, Mungo finally spoke. "It's a really good sword, but it's too light and not suitable for me." He waved the Valyrian steel sword in his hand and commented loudly. The deafening voice resounded throughout the lake, and constantly shocked and destroyed Aslan's confidence. Mungo had a faint smile on his face, and he silently observed the handsome and mature boy's face exposed loneliness, and the complex expression that changed repeatedly. The lakeside fell into a silent silence. After a long time, a vicissitudes of life and gentle voice suddenly came from the darkness. "Great Mungo Khal, Bass Porter salutes you, and I am willing to offer my loyalty to you together with Aslan." Hearing the blood wizard introduce himself, Mungo was slightly stunned. He did not expect that the person who had been hiding in the dark forest by the lake was Bass Porter. In fact, in the entire city of Khor, this person was the only one that made him most curious and expected to see. Before entering the city, he gave 2 orders to the loyal Khosrow, giving priority to protecting the craftsmen and books in the city and looking for the blood wizard Bass Porter. Since they came to the lakeside dock and seized the merchant ship under the guidance of Aslan, this person had been hiding there, but he could not escape Mungo's extraordinary vision. When Aslan presented the treasure ship and Valyrian steel weapons, the blood wizard also looked at Mungo intently. This scrutiny from behind once made him think that this person was an assassin. As the officer Ofer stood up and strongly opposed Aslan's loyalty, this man's eyes kept lingering on Aslan, revealing his deep concern and regret. It was full of the deep affection between father and son, master and apprentice. Mungo was also very curious about this person's identity because of his respect for Aslan. He just tentatively sprinkled the bait, but he didn't expect to catch a big fish. Chapter 24. Let him come over. Meng reached out and waved away the Dothraki cavalry on guard outside, but when he saw the Unsullied who could not understand the Dothraki language at all, he felt speechless in his heart. Fortunately, Officer Ofer responded in time, and with his additional translation, Bass Potter was able to arrive in front of Khal unharmed. At this time, Aslan didn't want to put his teacher into a dilemma. Against his will, he hurriedly stood up in front of the Blood Witch and said with a complicated expression, "Teacher, are you ready to leave the Free City and return to your hometown in Westeros?" The breeze blew by, silently. The lake water will not sway the heavy and tired boats, the flying and singing birds will return after their wings are tired, and the lonely leaves will return to their roots sooner or later. Bass Potter looked with pleasure at the students in front of him who stepped forward without hesitation, and corrected him with a smile. "I came to the Free City State following the footsteps of Dr. Marwen of the Citadel. Now that I have received news that the doctor has returned to Westeros, I am very eager to rush back and ask him for knowledge on mysterious magic. But my personal travel practice is not over yet, and the resolution I made when I left the school has not yet been completed. If a bachelor in Westeros City is called a master in a certain field of knowledge, he will be awarded a ring, scepter and mask corresponding to this field, as well as the title of doctor as a recognition of his professional knowledge. Certificate." Then the Blood Wizard bypassed the students and faced Kulmengo directly. After bowing and saluting, he continued with a frank smile. "The road to the east is extremely dangerous. There is no safer choice than following you. I believe you will allow me to browse cultural classics from all over the world unhindered." The underlying meaning of Bass Potter's words is easy to understand and obvious. Meng held a sword in one hand and drew a scimitar from his waist with the other hand, laughing loudly and saying, "Look, I forgot that Aslan also gave me a Valyrian steel scimitar." He raised two weapons high in his hands, crossed them together, and seemed to be weighing them, with a faint smile on his face. "The weight of the two weapons after being reforged into one is completely suitable for me. Just right, the gods will always be on my side. Destiny is destined. Now let us have Qohor, and the whole world has the reforging of Valyrian steel weapons. All the skilled craftsmen come from here." After finishing speaking, Mongo hung the Valyrian steel scimitar back on his belt, holding truth and pointing it at Aslan who was stunned in place. "Aslan, are you willing to be loyal to me?" He stretched out his hand to wave away the affairs officer who wanted to speak. "Ofer, please don't forget the oath I made to you. By then, Bravos will not just sit back and ignore us. Before that, we need to try our best to unite all our forces and friends, and, about Bravos, you missed the point. The real strength of Bravos is that they have an unparalleled fleet of warships in the military. They are richer and more prestigious than all other banks combined. The power of the Iron Bank is even more terrifying. Aren't they what I lack and need? We are Dothraki." Later, Meng handed the truth back to Aslan. His face was solemn, his tone was frustrated, and he said solemnly, "Aslan Roga, I give you the truth. I hope you can remember the oath, revitalize the family name, and now swear allegiance to me." Aslan laid the truth flat in front of him, half kneeling on his right knee. "I swear allegiance to you. I dedicate my life and glory to Kulmengo. I am your sword to resist the enemy and a strong shield to protect your safety. In times of crisis, I am willing to dedicate my life until death. I solemnly swear this in the name of the honor of the Lord of Flames and the true God of Light." He did not let Aslan stand up directly to declare the end of the oath ceremony, but continued to respond. "I, Kulmengo, swear by the name of the Horse God, facing the Holy Mother Mountain and the Womb Lake of the world, your loyalty will not be betrayed, your service will be justly rewarded, and I will definitely help Luo the Jiar family regains its name." The promises and vows that Meng made in response made Aslan Roga so happy that his shoulders could not help but tremble. That's right, Aslan's surname is not McKenning. It is just his father's name, which can also be said to be his middle name. His real surname is Roga from Lys City. The Valyrian steel sword truth is the sword of the Roga family. The family's lineage can be traced back to Valyria before the Doomsday Catastrophe, and was once the first family of Lys. The famous spring of Lys is also called the Roga Zte. It started with the great Lysandra Roga who obtained the lifelong title of first governor of Lys. His younger brother, Drazico Roga, married the Princess of Dorne in Westeros, became the prince-in-law of Dorne and became the Earl of the Fief. His daughter, the beautiful Miss Lara Roga, married Viserys Targaryen, a clever prince who lived in the eastern continent. This prince's mother was the light of the kingdom who triggered the civil war in the Dance of the Blood Dragons. Rhaenyra Targaryen. After Prince Viserys Targaryen returned to Westeros, he was immediately appointed Hand of the King by his brother Aegon III, and eventually ascended to the throne. After he married Lara Roga, they had 2 sons and 1 daughter. Their son was Aegon IV, who contributed to the Blackfire Rebellion in the Civil War, and the other was a famous hero in Westeros. Character Dragon Knight Aegon Targaryen. The three sons of the great Lysandra Rhoga, Mordor Rhoga, and his two younger brothers, came to Westeros as commanders of his sister Lara's guard, and all three were granted lordships at the same time. Mordor Rhoga was also given command of the army for a time during the war. The Rhoga family itself is a business giant in Lys. The Rhoga Bank controlled by Lysandra Rhoga was once more powerful than the Iron Bank in Braavos. At this point, the power of the Lugiali family reached its peak. Unexpectedly, Lysandra Rhoga in Lys and Drazico Rhoga in Dorne died on the same day respectively due to falling into the water from a shipwreck and choking on bacon. It is said that the murderer may be the faceless men from the House of Black and White in Braavos. After the death of the family patriarch, the Iron Bank's informants leaked the secrets of Loagier Bank, leading to a panic run and Loagier Bank declaring bankruptcy. Lysandra Rhogal, the eldest son of the great Lysandra and heir to the Bank of Rhoga, fled in haste and was captured on the banks of the Rhone. He was sent back to Lys as a slave, chained naked to a pillar and whipped. He died and his bones were tied to a pillar for 3 years. His other children and business heirs were either arrested and had their property confiscated, or suffered heavy losses and became bankrupt and unable to repay their debts. Members of the Rhoga family and their descendants were used as slaves, and were even sent back to the place of love that once belonged to the family to become bed slaves. The great Lysandra's children in Westeros, Lara Rhoga and Prince Viserys, could only hide in the castle for 18 years under the personal accompaniment and protection of King Aegon III. For a long time, the two sons were arrested, tortured, and later convicted of theft and insulting the nobility, and were punished by cutting off their right hands and being whipped respectively. In the end, only Mordor Rhoga, who was leading the army outside, received the news of the family's downfall, quickly relinquished command of the army, fled to Braavos by ship to negotiate with the Iron Bank, and was able to return to Essos with the gold. The mainland hired soldiers to counterattack Rhys and avenge the family, but it ended in failure. Mordor Rhoga was a soldier who wore the Valyrian steel sword Truth. It was he who collected the remains of his brother Lys Anlo and buried them in the family tomb. Aslan Rhoga is a descendant of Mordor. He bears the responsibility of revitalizing the family and has an indelible hatred with the Lysians and the Iron Bank of Braavos. Chapter 25. All was silent, the dawn in the east was throbbing towards the broken life, soothing the dark wounds that had torn the clothes all night. The longhorn sounded again. In the inner city, the noise caused by the gathering of the Dothraki army could not avoid alerting the residents of the outer city of Qohor. The city woke up silently in silence. The people who lived in fear all day long looked terrified, and their eyes looked through the cracks in the doors and windows, closely watching the movements of the Dothraki. The Dothraki cavalry, who had gained a lot and were satisfied, walked through the main road in the city in a swagger, with greedy and ferocious expressions, and their eyes were wanton and arrogant, sweeping across the rows of intact stone tents. The people of Qohor did not dare to look at them, hugging and trembling, like a sheep frightened by a pack of wolves on the grassland and feeling uneasy. The sound of horse hooves seemed to be stepping on the nervous heart, beating more and more tightly, as if the Dothraki were already banging hard on the door. After a long time, the gates of the outer city suddenly closed, and then the Unsullied stepped in unison and took over the city defense again. The bells in the city, which had not rung for many days, rang again, not as urgent and heart-wrenching as the last time the Dothraki came, but full of melodiousness and peace. The Dothraki are gone. This happy news quickly spread throughout the city of Qohor, and both ordinary people and merchants and craftsmen were excited. The world is unpredictable, with ups and downs, uncertainty about the future and the weakness of their own power, all dissipated, and the high-pressure emotions of the people of Qohor were released, and they cried with joy. Cheers rose from the city of Qohor, stretching endlessly, resounding through the sky, and turned into the taste of life after the breeze blew. Under the hazy red sun, the refreshing breath outside the city faded into the nose. Cow, do you really trust Aslan's proposal and choose to leave Qohor without any care? Mongol rode on horseback with a calm face, looking at the orderly Unsullied on the city wall and listening to the fierce cheers in the city. Then, he turned around and smiled and replied to Bass Porter, who was worried beside him. If you don't trust a person, don't employ him. If you decide to employ this person, please don't doubt his ability and loyalty. And you Westeros people should also know that the Dothraki have no good feelings for towns. We have no precedent for ruling a stone city. The blood wizard Bass Porter was stunned and smiled. Great Mongol cow, please forgive my ignorant offense. Mortal reason is usually conquered by emotions, and your calm reason can conquer emotions. The source of disaster is often caused by words, even if Bass Porter is clear in his heart. Mongol needs to be cautious when dealing with things and speaking, and must not say to him directly, "You are the hostage I left on purpose." "Master, you are actually worried about your students." He had already recognized the master's necklace that the blood wizard had put on his neck again, and he also knew the knowledge corresponding to the chain. This was an important reason why he had patience and respect for the master. He could understand the danger of Aslan staying alone in the city to control the situation. Then he comforted Bass Porter, "Please rest assured, there are 3,000 Unsullied in the city who are loyal to Aslan's orders. I also left 2 warriors to protect his safety." Hearing this, the blood wizard Bass Porter immediately remembered the officer who had served in the Iron Legion of Nugis for more than 12 years. He had a good impression of Bazuk, who had a stern and resolute face in a full military style, and nodded with a smile. Then, he couldn't help but think of a tall figure who kept swallowing food, the greedy strong man who was second only to Khal in strength. His brows were furrowed, so he couldn't help but say with a little worry, "Khal, the warrior named Bivos seems to be a little inflexible." Mongol laughed in silence. Indeed, he didn't just look not very smart, he was really not smart enough. Bivos was the strong man who followed him to break open the gate of the inner city. He was also the slave warrior recommended to him by the steward Orver after the Undercurrent raid. He had fought in the arena of Mirian and won the title of Strong Bivos. He claimed that he had never lost a battle. The scars on his chest and stomach came from the fact that he always gave his opponents a chance to cut him before dying. After his gladiator career in Mirian ended, he was sold to Qohor and then given to Jamokal as a gift by the high nobles in the city. Mongol did not answer. After thinking for a moment, he could only reluctantly explain. "Bivos is strong and brave enough. He once defeated 12 Dothraki warriors with his bare hands. Moreover, his not very flexible mind can guarantee loyalty." Without waiting for the blood wizard to speak, he hurriedly changed the subject and said, "Mr. Bachelor, please rest assured. Before setting off, I have authorized Aslan to abandon the city of Qohor when necessary. I have also specifically instructed and arranged for Bazuk to immediately lead the army to evacuate when his life is in danger. If you save the land but lose the people, both the land and the people will be lost. If you save the people but lose the land, both the land and the people will be saved." Base Zak was born in Westeros. As a maester who was trained in the citadel and would assist the lord in the future, he firmly believed that the most important thing for a monarch is to have a kind heart. He immediately bowed his head and saluted. "You are a kind and wise monarch, the source of faith for all loyal people, and the foundation of heroic spirit. When the horn in your hand sounds, the warriors of the kingdom must abide by their oaths, move forward indomitably, and stay away from arrogance and greed. You will surely lead mankind stay away from strife and killing, and never repeat the cold-blooded mistakes of history." Meng smiled and did not reply, calmly accepting this highly praised evaluation. With joy on his face, his turbulent and ambitious eyes swept over the nearly 500 Qohor craftsmen who were traveling with the Dothraki tribe, as well as the dozen or so carriages loaded with books. These are the high-end craftsmen and quintessence of knowledge gained in Korsalo's inner city. Countless properties were obtained by plundering the nobles and wealthy merchants of Qohor, but the talents and knowledge in the hands of the nobles were equally valuable. The color in his pupils was clear, the war goal had been achieved, and it didn't matter to him whether the city of Qohor existed or not. When he first became a tribal cow, Meng had thought about getting the gold tribute from the Qohor people, and then trying to negotiate with the city-state nobles and using the gold to buy a group of slave craftsmen. After annexing Jamokeo's tribe, he felt that he had strong soldiers and horses, and he wanted both gold and craftsmen. So, when he saw the gold paid as tribute by the envoy from Qohor city, he decided to get more, but he could only rely on the scimitar and bow and arrow in his hands to grab it. Now, he had the knowledge and talents he wanted most. Even if Aslan failed to defend the city of Qohor the next time the Dothraki advanced westward, a dead city would remain there and they would not be able to escape. The Dothraki chose to pretend to abandon the city of Qohor in order to lower the vigilance of other free cities. For them, a powerful but conservative Khal tribe who abides by tradition and wanders in the Dothraki Sea is far more powerful than a tribe that has strong military power and is the first Dothraki nomad to rule a city-state. It is plotting changes and is ambitious. The Kha'a tribe is much less threatening. The fist that was retracted was just to swing it out with more power. Governance is more arduous than war. If the Dothraki want to rule the city of Qohor stably, they must not only solve the problem of the people in the city, but also face other free city-states, which will undoubtedly tie up a lot of manpower and energy. Moreover, at the beginning of the war, the Khal fleet had already headed north. Although it might be restrained by the Dagger Lake pirates, it would sooner or later break free and return to the Jean River. Norvos, its ally who had received requests for help from Khal City, might also send troops to rescue them. The short-term benefits are not big, and the gains outweigh the losses. On the contrary, it will affect the overall situation of unity. Aslan stayed alone in the city, preparing to form a merchant governor's council to rule the city of Qohor behind the scenes. Not only could he continuously deliver resources to the Dothraki, but he could also hide in the 9 free city-states and pass on information. The Qohor fleet and the Norvos reinforcements were broken into pieces, and they were defeated without any bloodshed. The top priority is that he needs to return east as soon as possible to complete the unification of the Dothraki. Looking back for the last time, he muttered in his heart, the Dothraki did not like the town, but they also did not let the town go so easily. Aslan Yin must survive. Then, Meng drove away on his fiery red horse. After crossing the Qin River, you will see a forest of spears planted on the ground, with countless fresh heads growing on it.